We are back in open session. I just need everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item is the World Education Alignment Assessment Report.
Good evening, board. I'm Mike Eichhorn from Wold Architects.
And I'm Allison Andrews.
So we're pleased to come back tonight to present the Educational Alignment Report. Last board meeting, we gave kind of a progress of that. Tonight is the culmination of the findings. You've been copied. There's a hard copy there in front of you. And you've also received an electronic copy the last week. So tonight is really to give an overview, to hit a couple points, and also allow for question and answer. And certainly whenever we do these type of studies, we like to involve multiple stakeholders. So really we could not have done this without all these folks here that you see, all the experts in your district, all the teachers, the leaders, staff members, facilities. These people are all very critical to the process.
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt. We can't access this presentation.
Can't what?
We can't access this presentation.
Can you see it?
No,
Or-
we can see it here. Yeah.
Oh, you want it on your laptop? Okay. Okay. Should I keep going or do you want to wait till it pulls up? Okay. Okay. It's there. Okay. So Allison and I are going to go over essentially look at the parameters that we set up, some of the overarching themes, the physical conditions, safety and security, capacity enrollment. We've got a lot of numbers for you to follow, and curriculum initiatives and delivery is kind of a larger chunk of the presentation tonight. Our process involved, like I said, interviews, and really based on hard data. You know, we're not here to kind of speculate on things. This is really in-depth, walk every building, meet the users, the people that are actually on, boots on the ground that are in the buildings, and document how the buildings are used today, right? The parameters, really, we had to use the data of 2023, 2024 data. As new data comes in for this year, 2024, 2025, we could update parts of this as needed, but the core data is based on the 23-24 school year. And really, this whole study, it begins to show areas where there's capacity limitations and space challenges. So kind of physical, how many, how big, how small, and how that's affecting learning. And really, again, it gathers distinct and hard needs that are identified here. The overarching themes here, certainly an equitable experience is a key part of this. You have multiple schools, they're all a little bit different communities. How do we, in each student in every room, how are we providing the space appropriately? How adequate is it? And how equitable across the district? Obviously, there's limiting factors to the buildings and the sites. You have sites that are not, you don't have a lot of land there that you can keep expanding or building upon. The buildings were built quite a number of years ago. That limits it. But we will have to work within that. From an educational point of view, we touched on exploratory opportunities, ESL that is currently emerging in your district, and all the multidimensional opportunities that could be available to the students. Here you have an building age chart, and you can see that really, you have the Early Learning Center, which is the newer building, but all of your buildings over time, they've been added on. And with those additions, different priorities, different learning styles, and really we're at a point now where how do we create across the board a comprehensive viewpoint of the buildings? This is really a point in time here. We've looked at the junior highs, now we've looked at all the elementary schools, And this encapsulates all of that into one report.
So as just sort of a reminder too, since hopefully this rubric on the right-hand side kind of looks familiar from the first time we did the assessment with looking at the junior highs in Brentwood. But really what we aim to provide is we utilize this rubric to try to give you something that kind of sums up the whole, this nice hefty book for you to read and going through a lot of different, 9 different kind of big categories with a lot of subcategories that we're kind of analyzing and gathering that information around. But then using this to sort of summarize that and give you somewhat of a baseline where you can then compare the buildings to each other. And whether you take that and you look at it as a specific category and you want to compare them side by side, or what you see on the left is sort of that overall ranking if you take everything into account. And obviously, as the district moves forward in their processes, being able to prioritize different categories to align with sort of your overall objectives and things like that will then start to help you make some determinations how best to move forward. So the chart on the left, I did include the junior highs and Brentwood, just so that you can kind of see all of them now stacked together. But then the buildings that we were doing. Yes.
And this is based on the previous
Yes,
report
sir.
that included the mobiles for Brentwood.
Yes,
right?
it does.
Okay.
Yes. So please keep in mind, yes, the Brentwood Elementary, that is based on prior to the project that's now going to be under construction soon enough. So 5 big categories that we talk about. One of the first is really looking at the physical condition of the buildings themselves, the overall layout and organization, wayfinding, but also then down into the physical characteristics of each individual learning environment, thinking about the instructional aids, marker boards, access to technology, access to water, all of those things that really support but are a physical condition of the building. Are things that we took and looked into. So a couple of the highlights that I wanted to share, the gymnasiums at Byrd and John Jay, those being kind of at the center of a classroom core in the center of a wing. That was something that, we observed and heard from the administration and the staff as a challenge, noise and just access and, keeping that areas that you want to be more quiet and focused with something that's far more loud and active. The mobiles that are at Frost supporting art and music, see that as a limitation, just, having to move students in and out of the building throughout the day, the additional supervision, and kind of the, eye of security that goes along with that. Accessibility, though, as all of your buildings in the district being single story, makes them, majority of them accessible. There are some ancillary spaces that have some limitations or just based on current ADA codes might not fully align, but overall still something that we wanted to look at very closely. Classroom environments aren't consistent. As Mike mentioned, and we looked at that age chart, when you look at buildings that are, have such a wide range of the earliest being built back in the 50s to, new additions happening in the 2000s, you're going to get those inconsistencies just as maybe improvements or as Mike mentioned, criteria and priorities that change throughout the process. But some of the things that I think were more stand out as a larger thing worth discussing is, the light and the access to daylight into classroom spaces. Some of the just age of whether it's finishes or furniture and how that just changes the atmosphere of the learning environment. And then one big thing that we heard at every building leadership team wanted to make sure we understood right now the technology and how it, if you're using the projection screen, it goes over their marker boards and it starts to limit sort of the flexibility of the space itself as you have those two things layered on top of each other rather than being able to use them simultaneously. We also went through and talked with the district about security, safety, kind of went through the same audit we did in the first round. Overall, that's been a focus of the district and a lot of improvements and attention has been given to creating safe and secure buildings. But certainly looking at the site and the flow of the site and whether it's, you have limited parking space or limited drive lanes where maybe bus unloading and loading is happening kind of on a street, or cars are having to extend out into the neighborhoods as they're doing their drop off. And what does that mean for then how those students are walking in and from the building? And then additionally, just thinking about how are visitors coming to your sites, with some of those parking areas being limited, they're typically fairly full for day to day, or even a little bit undersized for just the day to day staff. And then you have a parent that comes for a meeting or to pick up a student, and they don't know where to park because there's, there may not be right near the front door. There was a few of your sites that have that. So as we move into capacity and enrollment, there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different lenses that we look at capacity, because it's not a one size fits all. And I'll kind of probably say this a couple times, but specifically even with this chart, the reason we look through all these different lenses is because it's hard to factor in the specific programming that happens at each individual building. And so that's where looking at capacity in one way isn't a one size fits all. So this chart is just a starting point. This is something we kind of use as a foundational piece. And on the far right is sort of that recommended range for square foot per student. And that's, again, if we were building a new school today, that would be sort of the target for overall. And most of your buildings fall within or above that range, with the exception of John Jay. But as I mentioned, that doesn't necessarily take into account the fact that you have dual language programs or your educational life skills programs, and those specific needs have typically larger space requirements. And so that would typically mean that as some of these buildings that are approaching the upper end of that range might actually, have some challenges in related to that space. This is three kind of different capacity charts and that we use. Instructional capacity. This one is the square foot per student based on the programming of each individual space. So if I take a general first grade classroom, I'm looking at about 35 square foot per student. The desired capacity, that's just based on the district's goals and objectives of trying to maintain a certain threshold. So we kind of averaged it at about that 22 students per classroom. I know there's a little bit of differential based on grade level. And then the potential being that 25. And so these are indicators where your administration is then thinking about, do we need to add a section because we don't want class sizes to get to be too big where they're, it's more challenging for the staff to manage, and it takes away from the environment for the student themselves. So we ran those numbers for each of our buildings. I did put a note here that as we were factoring it in, we took about a 90% as the target for dual language. And again, I know that that's not a perfect system. It's a guideline that we're using and striving for, but trying to use that so that as we look at the next slide here, where you start to show these ratios of how that occurs at each building. So looking at the enrollment to each of those different capacities. So typically we're targeting about 75% or less at that instructional level. And that just helps then identify that there is space for a student to come in, mid-year. It means that there's space for flexibility. It's a good spot to be. As you start to trend above that 75%, that's usually an indicator that spaces might be a little small for the type of programming you're trying to have in them. Desired capacity, again, looking at sort of a 75 to 85% is kind of that sweet spot, and then 75% less on the potential capacity. So this is just looking at a ratio of the current enrollment at each building to each of those final capacities as we calculated them. A little small to see on the screen. Hopefully there's a full, nice, clean version you can see in your packet. But I wanted to show just how that then looks across the board at all of the buildings, looking at each of those three ratios. So a few that, again, just wanting to highlight when we look at that instructional capacity. And if you're looking for it in your book, it's kind of near the middle. It is page CI-3, and it's a fold-out page. So it'll look like this. But it's kind of in the second half. There we go. People are starting to find it. That's good.
And that
Kind
that
of small in
form-
the printout too,
Yeah.
but
But that's a really great form because it has really everything in there and allows you to look across the board, different types of educational spaces.
yeah, I'll get to that here in a second,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
So just starting with sort of the ratios that you see, is everyone able to find it? Okay, looks like everyone's kind of found it. So the section that I'm looking at is actually kind of towards the bottom of that sheet. And we highlighted them so you kind of start to see it as a heat map where you see numbers, those percentages in red. Those are ones that are trending above kind of that recommendation, that guideline that I just mentioned on the last slide. Ones that are kind of in yellow, those are, you know, either right at the upper end of that limitation, trending slightly above, but you know, everything's kind of within that range. And then anything in green is at or even below that recommendation. So you start to see where, you know, the instructional capacity at Byrd and Devonshire and John Jay, what that means is based on the way the building is the building is being utilized. So where you have, you know, you're putting art in this space, you're putting, you know, third grade levels in these spaces. Those spaces are probably a little bit small for that function. And that's typical that you see, you know, maybe in a kindergarten where you've had to push, you know, you've expanded and now you've got full day. So a kindergarten classroom is in, you know, what would be normally a first grade size classroom, and two other kindergartens are a little bit larger. That's where you start to see that discrepancy.
So if we just look at Bird for an example,
Mhm.
When you have total instructional capacity, that's what we're currently doing.
So 311, that starting at the top row there, 311, that's your current enrollment.
Right.
And then when I take, if I can go back, so do you see this chart on the right?
Mhm.
So this chart exists for every building. So what we did is we take the square footage of each space and we run it against kind of an assignable square foot. So like I said, 35 square foot per grade level classroom. And that gives me sort of an instructional capacity of that space. So when we do that for all of the spaces in a building and we add up sort of what that recommended instructional capacity would be, that's where we total. So this is the Devonshire example just up here so you can kind of see where those numbers come back. And on here it's 349. So when I go back to this chart and you see Devonshire, you'll see that 349 in that instructional capacity. So it's
So we're at 89% to
correct when you then do that ratio.
So then take me down when I'm looking at the desired capacity for
Absolutely.
Devonshire. It's
Stick with
89.
Devonshire. Yep.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at the desired capacity. That's where we're taking that 22 students per classroom with a 90% factor for a dual language. And what if you maxed out, right? Every classroom was hitting that 22 or the 90% of for a dual language. Kind of what the capacity would be 352. So because your current enrollment is at 312, you run that percentage, that ratio, and you're at 89%.
And then potential capacity is if we were using every space perfectly.
It would be if you were doing it at that 25 students, which is kind of typically where then you're looking to add a section.
So so you were like speaking to her. What I'm trying to ask is, you notice that we're not necessarily using certain spaces as efficiently or for maybe the square footage like properly? Like something else could be going on with that space that would give us more space in like other areas?
So I think it's the nature of, there's typically two things, kind of generalized things. One is, as you know, support space, right? You have more needs for support services. You've got multiple specialists that might be, whether you've taken a full size classroom and you've divided it into smaller spaces, you're using that space differently than maybe it was designed. And so sometimes you'll find, I think maybe to better address your question, their classroom size varies greatly, you know, throughout the district. I think I have in here, I'm just going to reference it so that I don't misspeak too terribly here, but your grade level classrooms in size vary anywhere from 710 square feet up to 1,200 or higher. And that's for like a first through fifth grade classroom. So that doesn't even account for kindergarten. So you have that range. So in a building where they have more of that 710, their ratio is going to start to look off because those classrooms are smaller. A building or an area of a building that has some of those larger spaces, that's where those are going to feel more spacious. You're going to have, it's going to be in better alignment with that instructional capacity. The desired and the potential, that's really looking at, based on the number of sections you have in the building and how many of your sections are trending at or above the 22 or the 25. I believe I had that stat. The median class size is 18 students per classroom district-wide. However, there were, I think, 3 or so that were actually exceeding that potential capacity. So those are probably ones where maybe, some students had gotten added throughout the school year, and it was, do we go and make a whole new section, or, do we live with 26, 27 students? However, it's important that because of your dual language programs, you have a lot of classrooms that are supporting dual language across the district at multiple buildings. And those are then typically looking to be at that 90% of kind of that 22 or 25. And I think that's where you run, and when you get in a single building and you look at the number of sections, you start to see more of that disparity. Because if it's got a heavy dual language, then you might have, 2 big dual language classes with number of students, and then you'll have one smaller, monolingual classroom. Or the opposite is true at some of your buildings. And I think just that balance, that is something that I think is really a lot of what we're seeing here, is just how those programs are balanced and trying to maintain, it's important. You're always striving to have partner classrooms so that, there can be co-teaching and you can have different kids, rotate and things like that. But I'm not sure if I'm fully answering. We're going down some different rabbit holes. So is that answering your question? Okay. The rest of that chart, while we're on it, and we've touched on a little of these things, so I won't belabor them too much. Up at the top of that, that everything above what we were just looking at, this is where you'll kind of see, and it's a little bit of a summary. It's not every single space at every building for like the classrooms, but you'll start to see, in your kindergarten, what are kind of the range of classrooms for your grades 1 through 5. There's kind of that section there, and you'll see kind of if I look at Bird, you'll see kind of a square footage, like less than, 720. And then you'll see a small number next to it. That's the number of classrooms. So in that case, there's 3 classrooms that are kind of in that red. They're undersized, let's say. And as you move down, you can start to see how the gym sizes compare to each other. Cafeteria spaces, all of those intervention spaces. I was starting to get into that, where, you might have small areas that have been converted into intervention space just so that you have a place to house a specialist, or you might have a large classroom that's been divided and it's actually supporting 3 or more specialists within that same environment. So that's why you'll see a lot of that range in those spaces as well. But again, trying to show this as a heat map so you can see some of the kind of the hot spots, if you will. And I already kind of touched on that 710 to 1,200 square foot difference of just classroom size. And I think that's a big thing that caught our eye. And as we were walking through the schools, there's a lot of classrooms some that felt, really spacious, felt like they could do a lot of flexible things, have different zones, students working in different groups. And then you see some of those smaller ones, and they certainly feel that. This is a zoom in of that. I kind of just talked through all of this. The one other piece, though, I think, and we'll hit on this a little bit more later, is that gym size. And I know this is something that we talked about with Brentwood, but is constant kind of continual theme across the rest of the buildings, in that the gyms are sized well when you had, 1 teaching station per day. And that was, or one teaching station throughout the day. And that was enough to support the enrollment and the needs of that program. As you've expanded your curriculum and the state has driven a lot of this too, where you're typically having 2 teaching stations almost throughout the entire day. And that's where these spaces they're undersized to support that many students at the same time. So that was definitely a common theme we saw that carried over from Brentwood. And then with the exploratories, I know Mike mentioned that as one of our emerging themes, certainly as you look to expand, provide art and music and even STEM opportunities and look to continue to grow those opportunities for students. In a lot of cases, those classes are kind of the ones that get moved around. It's where is there an open, where can we move art? But then that classroom is maybe not really designed to support the curriculum. The amount of storage, access to water for cleaning and for activities becomes more limited. So kind of just going through some more of those curriculum initiatives, just sort of can continue to mention the gyms. This just kind of shows that range of size as well, a 21% difference across, but with many of them trending, even at the largest size being below sort of that recommended for the two teaching stations at a time. An additional factor though, with your gyms being one of your two or three large group spaces in the building, in many cases, they weren't large enough to support an all-school assembly. Being able to bring all of the kids together for a speaker or just bringing the whole group together from just a community standpoint. Cafeterias. This is something with the fact that you're having kind of food prepared off-site delivered to the buildings. Your kitchens and serveries are kind of set up for that. If you were to expand those opportunities or looking to expand those, you would kind of face some challenges just with the size of your kitchens. Some of the tables, and as they come out of the wall, some of those are dated and things like that, but still operating. And I think all but Robert Frost are able to accommodate the entire enrollment in kind of the two periods, let's say, where they're alternating, lost my train of thought, periods, but where they're alternating between kind of lunch and then switching and going out to recess. Libraries, that was another one that we heard a lot of from our building leadership teams. I think almost all of the buildings, they have great opportunity spaces, some fairly large spaces, but generally speaking, there's some limiting factors where old computer labs had been, you're not really teaching computer, but the remnants of that casework and those tables, those are still there, and they limit what you can then do in that space. Some of the built-in, circulation desks or reading areas were something that, again, felt like it created an opportunity, but maybe isn't in the right spot for how things are really being taught today. And then I will note at Claremont, with the fact that library is open to the corridors, that was a really big challenge that they were facing, because it's used as a corridor. If you have students out in the hallways, they maybe duck into the library, and it's disruptive to the classes being taught. But those spaces really are such great opportunities for those buildings, just because of the size, most of them being kind of centrally located in the building, become a great resource space for classes. Art and music, already kind of touched on these. The mobiles at Robert and Frost, as I know the board is well aware, being a limiting factor for those. And then I touched on a little bit of, as those classes just kind of get moved throughout the building, they're not necessarily always in the best of environments. Music was one, as that one kind of gets pushed around and isn't necessarily then separated kind of from an acoustical standpoint from adjacent spaces, and how that can be distracting to a classroom that might be right next door. Student support space. This is one that you'll see kind of even just from the pictures, and I'm sure as you've walked through the buildings, kind of comes in all shapes and sizes and varieties. The buildings are really finding every space that they can, and making the most use out of those to support just the needs of all of the students and the different specialists and interventions that are going on. Creating fun sensory walkways in the hallways, where some buildings maybe do have a small or even a small space that they can use for kind of a sensory space, but definitely something that the building leadership teams were asking for and would love to see, and just kind of some consistency, but also being able to get intervention space out of the hallways, putting them in a classroom that isn't necessarily shared, where you're having competing lessons going on at the same time. And then we already talked a little bit about the classrooms, environments as a whole, just with the size. I mentioned that technology one. I laughed just because the buildings would mention, I'm like, I think we've heard that once before. But I mean, again, teachers are making great use out of the space they have, being creative with storage opportunities, whether they're finding opportunities to get grants or things for more flexible furniture, but looking at it as an opportunity to standardize what is the experience for students from classroom to classroom, building to building. Definitely as an opportunity space to just increase that overall experience for students. The last kind of category that we do look at in our analysis is just sort of activity use, community use. How are the buildings being used outside of school hours? With some of the limited sites and the sizes of those, outdoor activities and events are a little bit more limited. Gymnasiums, cafeterias, those are often being used by park districts or Girl Scouts, other community organizations. You've got pretty active PTOs, I think, at all of your buildings, and they're always looking for opportunities to host events, whether that's during school hours or afterwards. So definitely making the most use out of all of those. But one thing that we did note, which is because of going back to that overall layout of the buildings, most of your buildings are not able to lock down a specific, if you want to host an event in the gym, anybody coming in kind of has full access to the rest of the building other than being able to lock individual rooms. And that was something that, if you're looking at, I know we talked about that with Brentwood, if you're looking at doing any work, keeping that in mind of how can we create space that can then be better secured for those after hour uses, just for the overall kind of safety of anything else going on in the building.
So thinking about next steps, certainly there's a lot of data here, and I think we've encapsulated it into one report. I think certainly what's evident is that there's discrepancies in the size of spaces, how they're being used, how you don't have certain types of spaces, how they're not aligned maybe with what they were originally designed for. And then different schools have different variations and pretty big ones in some cases. So really looking at kind of the next step here is thinking forward, again, thinking about a comprehensive long-range plan for the district. Where do you want to be in 5-10 years? Really the next step here is to look at developing a long-range plan, and the center of that is a long-range plan committee. And that is made up of multiple stakeholders from the district, from the community, educators, really a central kind of task force, if you will, that would start to begin to pull in information, new research, tap into certainly our report would be really the key foundation of all this is the facts that we presented tonight. This report doesn't have a solution to it, right? It's the facts of which you're going to develop solutions. And that is, as a result, the long-range planning committee will develop those priorities. What are the top priorities? What are the guiding principles for the district when you're looking at facilities? And then looking at options. How are we going to solve this in a comprehensive way across the district? I think we have a bulk amount of information that you are ready to start that process. And if there's additional information that needs to be brought in, then we'll be making those recommendations of what additional information needs to be brought in. So that process, we're really looking at starting that next year. So over the next few months, Walt can certainly come back at the next board meeting and show a little more like what does that look like exactly? Like what are the steps? What would we do? How long would it take? That's something that we would want to, again, introduce more to the administration and then come back and present some recommendations about what the next steps would be. So that's where we're at. We're at a point where we could get questions from the board and move forward.
So you spoke of next steps as building a long-range plan. Is there something we should be doing with this data now to communicate to the community, the state of things are in right now? Do we make this gigantic report public, or what do we do in the meantime as we're building that?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the next step is communicating what your needs are. So whatever mechanisms you have with that, certainly, you know your community the best. I think, how do you communicate that, whether it's through, I mean, certainly tonight we have got a overarching, I think this is a public document. Someone can come here and flip through it, and ask questions. I think that certainly a series of community meetings could take place if you want to do community engagement. But I think before we just start going off and doing, this and that, I think really that roadmap, that long range planning roadmap needs to be established, and the school board needs to agree upon that. Just to go off and start, sending information, I think it would be fine, but I don't like we want to drag that out too much. I think we want to make sure that we're strategic in how we're communicating that and keep on message, really.
Yeah.
And that the message is based on these facts, that we're not getting other ideas of what could or could not be.
No, I think I think this gives us everything we possibly need to do that planning for the future.
Okay.
And I like that we did this independently of anything. It's just fact finding. What's the state of the building? What's the state of everything? What do we have? Because I think a lot of what we need is going to depend on programming, like specifically around the dual language program and what that looks like going forward. And that's a separate thing, not even associated with the work that you're doing, right? And then how do we bring all of that stuff together to develop the plan on? I think certainly every school's in need of a refresh, right? At a very minimum.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about the signs, but like every time I drive by a school, like the signs are falling over. So that's the first thing you see when you go to a school. It's silly, but
the sign.
it's
It was looked at by facilities and finance, and they're surprisingly expensive.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's also part of the plan. Like,
Yeah.
if you're just refreshing a school, I'm sure you're talking about millions of dollars, right? Even if you're not building addition.
No, and I think that you want to do things so you're not undoing things later, right?
Correct.
And so if the dual language programming, we can fold that in, with the information that we have. And then, as Allison mentioned about balancing out the spaces appropriately and how they align with how you want to deliver education, I think all that is that comprehensive vision.
Right.
That has to come from the community and the board.
And I know things are outdated. I don't know if it was you who mentioned that even just where now we have Chromebooks in every classroom, like even where the plugs are and where people can plug into those and the students can plug into those. So I know the solutions aren't just tearing down walls and putting up new walls, like, furniture and that type of stuff can play a big role in it too. So does anybody else have questions?
I just briefly had a question. Claremont got the mobiles from Brentwood. What are those being used for now?
Yeah, I was going to just make sure our Claremont folks heard that added. So obviously this was done at a point in time prior to the work that took place. So we even have some updates and additions since the report was created. But yes, the mobile classrooms moved from Brentwood over to Claremont. They are also being used to support art and music for all students K through 5. Yeah, and even some of the data pieces that are within here have shifted. I think one of the most important components in looking at just the numbers give us one set of data, but I also think, to Allison, you did a really nice job pointing out how it feels within the building is what is really important as an added layer to this. So when you're talking about 25 fifth graders in a 750-foot classroom feels very different than 13 kindergartners in an 1,100 square foot classroom. And those are the lived experiences and why our spaces matter so much. And taking a look at it, not just from every classroom is not balanced, because we have children our community doesn't produce even numbers at every grade level every year. So those are ideals, but that's not the reality. And layering those pieces together, I think, is what tells the full story. So I appreciate that.
Okay, so what do you need from us next, or committee next steps, or what?
So this would be another commitment and consulting function that WOLD can provide. So we would probably solicit, if the board is interested, in a proposal from WOLD to enter into a long-range community planning process. There would obviously be costs for their services to facilitate that. Then I think we would want to look at any other adjacent pieces of data that we would want to look at in terms of, for example, our dual language piece, which we have a presentation later this evening. I think the other piece that was done just now 3 years ago, that is a critical component that layers in with this, is our demographic and boundary study. I think we need to be looking at that in tandem. And that has even significantly changed in the last 3 years due to just changes in our communities. So whether we want to say, what are the other pieces of data that we would need? I think that all would enter into that planning process before we embark then creating a real steering committee community-wide to engage in the long-term committee process.
Thoughts, anybody? I think definitely most of this work, other than class sizes, the buildings are going to change if we're not doing anything to them, right? So this will hold for longer than I think a boundary study holds for, because those shift so much. And I feel like the boundary study, if we did a boundary study, we would need more than, I don't know what the options were back then, but it seemed like, I try to look back, one option, or do they have multiple options?
No, and again, it's just fact finding.
Right.
And so you don't have to get any recommendations from that. It's, again, similar to this.
Who did that for us?
Crapper, they were contracted prior to my starting here. So that was who they had used previously. I think there's some other companies that do it as well. So if we wanted to gather that, or if we felt that, we have a pretty good handle in terms of where our students live and what our current situation is, we can use that as a baseline and then see what we would need to.
How long did that take?
That was it was a lengthy process. Yeah.
Gather the data and then package it up and present it.
Yeah. So that was again, I think what's to be mindful in looking back historically is that all of these pieces, so every audit that we did, the Crapper demographic and boundary study, those are fact finding to present to you. Here's what the numbers tell us. And then the process in what solution or recommendations would be made based on all of the data, that's a community driven process. So just keeping that piece in mind. We're not looking for WOLD to recommend to us what to do first, because they need to know all of the priorities of the community.
Yeah, and that was going to be something I was going to ask. So if the next step is to have community members, staff working together on this long-range plan, you don't make that long-range plan, right? You facilitate rather than...
Yeah, so
you're not going to bring us like a boxed plan and say this will work for your district, right?
No, so we facilitate the conversations, the dialogue. So right now we have, all of these needs laid out in front of us. And I think the information, that other information that you can bring to the table about, your programming goals or those demographics is just, again, more information that says, oh, we're going to have growth here. We need to be thinking about that, or we're going to have a decline here, or we're moving a program. So we have all that. The long range planning process then brings in those broad groups of stakeholders so that we can ultimately prioritize, first come to consensus on the needs. I think getting that broader input and kind of getting the buy-in from that large group to say, yes, these are our needs, making sure there's understanding. If I'm a Devonshire parent, I don't fully understand the needs at another building because my child doesn't go there. So having that broad understanding, and then as a group being able to prioritize as a district what are those our priority needs, and then from there our team can further facilitate. Okay, now we have the priority needs. What does that look like in potential solutions, in options for how that you would make intervention at each building? Because it might just be a refresh, or it might be we need to add a gym, or whatever that ends up being. Kind of work through those different options. As Mike mentioned, some of the other foundation of that are the guiding principles, the criteria, so that we're constantly kind of checking ourselves against, again, these were our priorities, and making sure that comprehensive district plan and what that looks like at each building is all in alignment with that. So that would be sort of what that long range planning committee, they become kind of the spokespeople for the district and that broad stakeholder group, so that
Yeah.
we're having that dialogue. It's not a give us the priorities and then we're going to go sit in a vacuum and draw it up and then, bring it back to you. It's kind of a back and forth and an evolutionary kind of
Yeah.
process.
And the long range planning committee will give a recommendation to the school board
Yes.
at the end of the day. So they will recommend, this is what we're recommending. And from that, we're facilitating the process. You'll see up there, and we're kind of getting to that phase 2 session, let's say. From that will be options that will come out of it and recommended options at the end. And of course, phase 3 is the design and construction. But I think that we're kind of in that middle phase right now.
Okay. I think we have obviously all we need from
Yeah.
you at the moment. I think the next big thing is for us to figure out what the dual language program looks like in the updated version, right? That's still ongoing, because I don't think we can, any work we do without having a plan for that would just be, there's too intertwined, right? So we have
Yeah.
to, I think, figure that out, right? Everybody agree? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next would be comments and suggestions from the public. Anybody wish to address the board tonight? If not, we can move on to superintendent reports, 5.01 FOIA requests.
Since the last report to the Board of Education, the district has supported 6 FOIA requests.
All right, thank you. And then monthly updates. Dr. Bresnahan?
All right, so excited to share, our last month's worth of work and what's kind of up on the horizon. Again, these are many things that we report out on through our board weekly and some other communications, but always good to review and refresh our memories on the things that we're doing. So upcoming, we will be having our communications committee meeting, and we are going to offer that out for a full board opportunity on October 2nd, immediately preceding our regularly scheduled board meeting from 6 to 7 p.m. So it'll be an opportunity for us to review the communications audit that was done, and you have access to that report as a board. But it will give an opportunity to present out some key findings, as well as bring back our communications committee, who really helped facilitate and guide that work, and then introduce and kind of pass the torch over to our new director of communications and community engagement, Rachel Jobski. So that will be an exciting and illuminating opportunity, and that is where we will begin to plan for how we will address and create a strategic communications plan as a district. We have been having our DEA school visits. So Ann Wing, our amazing DEA president, who's here tonight, she and I have gone on our whirlwind tour in year 2, and we visited 9 out of 15 so far. It's been just a really great opportunity to open some doors for communication, hear what are the successes and celebrations for the start of the school year, but also what do we need to have on our radar in terms of some of the challenges and goals that each of our schools are facing. We're seeing some commonalities and getting some feedback, but also some discrete and unique needs that we then come back and can work more proactively. So appreciate their partnership in doing this work. And then next week, we will be doing our SLT school visits, which is where our team of district leaders is able to go out and spend a good chunk of time at each of our individual schools. We do it once to each school in the first semester, and then we do a second round in the second semester. Our principals and assistant principals really lead this work. They get to choose what we see. They get to choose what we talk about. They create the agendas, and they get us, a captive audience with our team to really ensure that we have a good idea firsthand of what's happening in our schools. So looking forward to those visits. Sure. Yes, it will be. We have not made it available to the public yet because we wanted the opportunity to share it with the committee and the board first, and then it will be made available. And that's part of, yes, absolutely. Yep. All right, from our associate superintendent's office, we are really looking at our assessment and accountability pieces. So as we do every year in the fall, we are getting ready for our benchmark assessment results that will be shared out at our October 2nd board meeting. So that's always a nice opportunity to get a comprehensive look at how we're doing in the fall with some of our initial baseline data across all of our different assessments. And then we really prepare as well to look at that preliminary review of the Illinois State School Report Card, which will be made public and released on October 30th of every year they do that. So excited to see our IAR results from a statewide comparison, as well as, our equity journey continuum and other factors that are included on those school report cards. Professional learning continues to be underway. So we actually had a district PLT, professional learning time, which was what happens when we send our kids home early on Wednesdays. Our teachers and staff get to participate in professional learning. So we've been having the opportunity really to dive into some assessment literacy. Many thanks to our district leaders who have gone out and been able to go directly to schools and present and do almost a data workshop with our staff at our elementaries and at our junior highs. So that's been really nice to be able to do that this month, as well as we've been doing our planning for our parent teacher conferences and getting some feedback and revamping that so that we can make sure we are meeting our families' needs. We have our October Institute Day coming up on October 14th, giving a lot of voice and input from our staff, some need to know things and need to train on, but also what are the things that staff are needing and being able to make some selections during that day. And then we have our Title IX administrator and staff professional learning, which is mandated based on updates and policy changes to Title IX, which we talked about during our policy committee. Business services. So we are underway in our audit for FY24. So finishing up all the data on that. And then that will be presented by our auditors later this fall into early winter. And as you know, we are working on the levy. I want to thank Ron O'Connor in our business office, who have done a lot of work to put together some comprehensive, really digestible information about the levy and the levy process, because it is not a simple, easy thing to understand, and really also working with our teachers and our staff to make sure that we all have a good common understanding of what that process is. And we are looking at CPI of 3.4%. We are also, as part of the WOLD study, you'll notice in here, each school also indicates the number of parking spaces, and you'll see highlights around just storage. So those are things that we're trying to look at. While we are still planning for a long range, we have some immediate needs that we need to address, particularly in the area of storage at several of our elementary schools. So we're looking for some storage that will be placed on site that we can house some things to free up. And number one, it's a safety concern within our buildings, and to free up some instructional space. So we have provided some information in the weekly as costs related to that, but that has risen to a top priority as relayed to us from our buildings. And then also parking. So as we've been increasing our resource allocation based on student needs, parking is being impacted. And I know when we go out to visit buildings, it is impossible to find parking some places. So we are looking at some parking additions. We did one at Juliet Low over the summer, but we are also looking next at John Jay, where some of our staff are having to regularly park out on the street, or we're even seeing some parking in fire lanes, which we definitely do not want to see. So those are all on the horizon to address this year. Curriculum and instruction, always exciting things happening there. We are very excited about our kindergarten council that is happening this year. This is an area where we know how students are coming to us in kindergarten is something that we must adapt to. We are seeing different needs and behaviors and readiness, and we want to be able to adapt and make sure that we are prepared and that we have a developmentally appropriate kindergarten program. So we're grateful to our staff and our instructional leaders who will be guiding that kindergarten council so that we can really look at how we revamp our program to ensure that we're meeting the developmental needs of our kindergarten students and supporting our staff in addressing those needs as well. The District 214 collaboration that we've talked about with the math piece is underway. They had their kickoff meeting already. Superintendents, we met as well and really wanted to make sure that we are going to be present at least some of these meetings to lend our support and show that it is a top priority for us, but getting lots of positive early feedback from that and excited for those opportunities for our junior high staff to collaborate. And I really want to send a shout out to 214 and their superintendent, Scott Rowe, who has laid a foundation and an understanding that we are partners in this. And, it is a continuum pre-K through 12, and I appreciate that partnership and opportunity to articulate with them. Junior high master schedule, very well underway. I think they had a meeting earlier today. I had a chance to attend the larger master schedule committee meeting, which was very teacher driven, very teacher led, and a lot of feedback, a lot of competing needs and priorities, as you can imagine, when we're talking about content areas and everyone really feeling passionately about making sure all students get access to all content areas each and every single day. So excited about that work and what it's going to lead to, and ultimately a new schedule that will be with plenty of time for planning and preparation to be in place next school year in 25-26. And then lastly, an update on our varsity tutors. We are rolling that out. We are excited to be able to offer that at no cost to our families. There's a lot of different components with it, and we are going to be monitoring the data and usage of that service, as well as looking for how do we partner with them during instructional time, during the day, in some small groups, needs-based ways to see their effectiveness to offer that within the school day.
I remember you saying at one point, or somebody saying at one point, that you guys were piloting somewhere during the school day this year.
That is what we are building towards.
Okay,
to
so
do
no
those
one-
pilots.
No one
Yes.
this year.
For this year.
For this year.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Can you
Okay.
update us when
Oh,
that starts?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, I have a question too. So some staff that I spoke to earlier this week were not even aware that an email went out to parents to check out their kids' varsity tutor program, right, on their Chromebook.
We did share with staff in our staff update, and then the communication went out to families. So as a new initiative, sometimes it takes a while for everyone to catch on.
Mhm.
Once we get going with the pilots, I think in some of our schools, we're actually having a meeting in a couple of days to get that going. That's sometimes get the ball rolling. People start to get more aware of it, but it is very new. And because teachers aren't required to actually use it themselves, it is kind of a unique thing because it's on their Chromebooks, it's in Clever, yet teachers aren't really using it yet in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form.
So when you say that they're going to possibly be using it in the classroom, teachers are going to be trained to use varsity tutors with the kids?
Yes, this is why we want to start small with a couple of classes so that we have the capacity to really watch and see. We want to make sure the platform's working well. This is new. We would want to roll something out that's not effective. And then we're going to look and see how's it going? What do we need? And then from there, determine how we can continue to expand that for students who need those extra supports. And then think of some other ideas a little later.
And I do want to give a little shout out because Rachel Jobski, our new director of communications, really is working with each of our departments on these initiatives and actually wrote out an entire communications plan after meeting with our instruction team to ensure that all stakeholder groups who are impacted received communication. So obviously we continue to regularly communicate, but that's why we're going to be giving updates and ensuring that everybody has access to the information.
Do you expect that varsity tutors will be discussed at the parent-teacher conferences that are coming up?
I don't know if that may come up based on parents and their usage and what we see. So that's something that we can look at in the data.
Or just brought up to parents who may not be aware or realize that their students
Sure,
might benefit.
we will have continued communication efforts to support parents in accessing and understanding the availability of this.
Yeah, there's lots of parents who use tutors, who pay for tutors.
Mhm.
So if they know that this is available, I just think, if whatever we have to do to let them know it's there.
All right, human resources, we continue to support our new teacher network. So we are very excited about how the start of the year went, but we want to make sure that this is an ongoing process throughout the year. So thank you to Ross Vittori and his department and our new teacher mentoring facilitators who are new this year. They are actually going out this month to visit schools and really personally check in on each of our new staff members and just do, that ongoing communication and touch bases to ensure they feel welcome, supported, and hear feedback from them. In terms of our administrator and certified professional goal setting, so all of those who are on evaluation, including our, principals and other administrators, we all participate in goal setting each and every year. So right now we already have over 450 different professional goals that have been drafted and inputted into our system, which really is the whole point of the evaluation process, to support goal setting and achieving those goals. Technology and innovation. So we obviously had a community-wide update over the last couple weeks in terms of our phishing scam that we fell victim to. So I want to just share a reminder with our board and with our community that we did do a cybersecurity audit last year. Got feedback. This is an ongoing need. It is incredibly disheartening that phishing scams seem to be targeting young people more and more for opportunities for identity theft. So we continue to put security practices into place, along with such things as our two-factor authentication, which as an end user feels cumbersome. But I think anyone who was a part of that phishing scam last week, which I know it ran like wildfire through our system, and those people who really fell victim to sending out personal information about their children, thinking that there was a job opportunity. It was really unfortunate. So we want to continue to work on our end to respond to that, but we appreciate everyone's cooperation within our system. Better safe than sorry. You are welcome to question any email. Pick up the phone and call, or send an email directly to someone. Did you really send this? I appreciated the staff that alerted me that my name was signed to things that I did not authorize. So appreciate everyone's partnership in keeping our technology and our identity and information safe. A big item that is coming up is our student device refresh. So we are on year 4 with our student devices. So there is going to be, under Ben Gray's leadership and our technology and innovation department, pulling together a task force to really evaluate our current technology and then build towards a recommendation for the board to approve, hopefully in review in early winter and then action in the spring. We also wait for the cycles of technology. What is the most up-to-date versions that are out there, because the purchase will actually happen after July 1 in 25. So it will be part of the 25-26 fiscal budget.
Can I ask real quick? When are the teachers' devices also, or the staff devices, are they also on a, like,
They are also on a
calendar?
refresh cycle, but they do not fall at the same time. So I'll defer to Ben.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
So I know I was here when we did a refresh. So it's kind of nice. We don't have to do staff and students all at once, which is really, really helpful. And I think part of what they're going to be looking at also is 4 years still the best practice. Do we need to modify? I know that was a large discussion when that was first decided. Technology is changing very rapidly. So we want to make sure we're putting reliable and affordable devices in the hands of our students to meet the needs of their teaching and
Is
learning.
that something we have budgeted for?
Yeah, so it will be budgeted for the 25-26. So we put that in our regular rotation. Staff every 2 years,
Okay.
one of those refreshes falls.
And that's all students
Mhm.
K-8? Okay. Have you guys ever thought about splitting it depending on how many? I don't know if that's.
Splitting it becomes challenging because when you split it, you get a different device then. So now you're
Yes.
supporting 2 devices. So we've evaluated a number of different refresh cycles. We did it one time where we did do K through 2 and then 3 through 8. It actually became a little bit of an issue because we were supporting 2 different types of devices.
Which makes sense.
So then does an 8th grader's device go back to the kindergarten
8th
level?
graders cycled down the kindergarten during that time. Yes.
Was there a device refresh associated with the ESSER funds? Were ESSER funds used to do, I thought I recall seeing, was it the teachers' devices were refreshed using the ESSER funds a few years ago?
It wasn't the staff devices, no, but we have to go back to look to see if it was the student devices that were augmented with the ESSER. But I don't believe it paid for all of it, but I can go back and check that.
So again, more information as that task force convenes will be shared with the board in the coming months. And we are excited as well that we've been able to look through our coaching staff to reallocate some support through one of our positions to really support innovative learning practices. So that coach goes out and has the opportunity to work and support staff so that we can continue to be innovative in our approach to teaching and learning. And I believe lastly, student services and support. So we have implemented, as we shared previously, we have a new elementary SEL curriculum resource that has been implemented in K-5. And so far we're receiving very positive feedback from our staff. It not only is great in allowing the lessons that happen on a regular basis, but also just a good go-to toolbox for teachers when they're facing different needs in the moment. They have some tools and resources that they can pull from that resource. So we're glad to hear training went well at the start of the school year, and now they're fully using it, and we'll be evaluating it.
What is the name of that?
Quaver.
Quaver. Thank you.
Mhm. So as we've discussed previously, we are engaging in our professional learning communities, PLCs, and we're really looking at starting to garner some shared leadership opportunities with our teachers. And this really is for teachers by teachers. We appreciate teachers and being able to work within their grade levels to use their data and make best decisions in the moment for their students. And so we want to recognize and acknowledge the work that it takes to help run in that team capacity. So we are looking at additional training and supports as well as stipends for designated team leaders within each of our grade levels. Junior highs have been doing it for quite some time, and now we're excited to roll it out at the elementary. I'm hoping that we have those who are interested in leadership positions. It's not someone who is going to be an administrative role. It is someone who is really working as a side-by-side peer to help facilitate, receive some extra training, work with fellow leaders within their teaching staff to just support their teams and advocate for their needs. And then I'm very excited that we had our family education series, which kicked off last night. Thank you to Michelle and Nikki, who were both able to attend that session last night. And I want to give a shout out to our Education Foundation, who helped support and sponsor that program. Really, I want to give kudos to Dr. Ossel, Miss Ashley Robinson, and Robertson. Sorry. Miss Dr. Robinson back there, getting those names mixed up. But and our team of community outreach specialists and everyone else in the department who came out. They provided refreshments. They provided childcare. We had a local community experts who came. We had a session that was run in English. We had a session that was run fully in Spanish. We had fairly good turnout, I would say, for our first kickoff, and it was on parenting supports and how to have positive parenting practices. I went away with some good tips, and it was a nice, there are people who know our community and our students. So it was a great opportunity to get some good conversations started. We have 2 more sessions that'll be coming up. The next one will be October 15th at Friendship. That's a focus on technology, addiction, and best practices in supporting our students' best use of technology. And then we have our final 3rd one in November, which will be on mental health. So please spread the word. We continue to share it in our communications. Again, a really great informative opportunity for students. We had some of our older students come with their families and participate. So it was just really nice to come together as a community to support, because schools cannot do it alone and parents cannot do it alone. So coming together in partnership is great.
Anybody can go to these, right? It's not
Yep,
just.
it is full. Yep. So we rotated. It was at Holmes last night, and then it'll be at Friendship, and the final one will be at Grove. So we're hoping to make it accessible across the district. We also recorded the English presentation last night, so we can at least archive that and make that available as a resource for families in need. And then lastly, we, as the board has already been made aware, we have a safety committee that is scheduled for September 19th, I believe at 3 p.m. So thank you to Dr. Ossel and our Director of Safety and Security, Danny Malik, who will be facilitating that. That is not an open committee. That is a superintendent's committee with designated representatives, including our first responders who have already been invited, designated representative principals, administration, teachers, staff, and we have our designated board members who are TR and Nikki, I believe. So look forward to the opportunity to talk about that. And then obviously we will report out and have board discussions following that at a subsequent meeting. So a lot going on. Thank you.
Good, thank you. The communications audit is next. Is that just?
That's really just an FYI. I kind of talked about it already in the update, but I wanted to have that to know that it audit and the report is done, but we are not taking any next steps until we convene the committee
next-
who will really be in charge of putting that planning process into place.
And
So that's just the update on that.
prior to the next board meeting, right?
Yep, immediately preceding the next board meeting.
Okay.
I just want to chime in real quick there. For the board, they put in some excellent tips for us to be able to further reach out to our communities. One of them I would like to talk about maybe in the future is the idea of adopting a school. I think it would be really easy for us to all adopt, one of our kids' schools for the year just to start. I thought it was an excellent way. You just basically like try to show up to as many after school events as possible. People see you there, they get comfortable seeing you there. And you're just there to reach out to individual community members. So that's something that I think that we could do very, very easily. And it would be a way to reach out to our communities in a more positive way.
Awesome.
Nice, I like that. Okay, 5.04 TDP review.
Yes, so we had some board questions related to our TDP program. And so we have invited some special guests tonight to provide some basic overview information and to open the conversation around our TDP program. So thank you for being here.
Yes, good evening. I'm very happy to introduce our TDP leadership team, and I see these teachers representing tonight as well. So I do want to thank the team and the TDP teaching staff who spent a great deal of time last year digging in, learning about it, reflecting, and tonight they're here to share. The purpose really tonight is to give a little bit of a broad overview as to how our program is structured, the purpose of the program in its current form, as well as some of the findings of the TDP review, as well as our 3-year action plan that we are starting this school year. So Dr. Nicole Robinson and Jody Briggs, our lead teacher, will be sharing tonight.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Nicole Robinson. I have the pleasure of working with our TDP team and overseeing the program. And so we're excited today to be able to give you a little overview of what our program entails and our program review and what some of the changes and adjustments to the program we're looking forward to. So just a little overview of what our current program is. We serve students in grades 3 through 5 who've qualified for additional services in reading, in math, or in both. And also our teachers provide all second grade students, critical thinking lessons. And the idea behind that is to give kind of a uniform experience to all second graders to start thinking in different ways, in deeper ways, in order to just kind of level that playing field for all of our kids. Each of our elementary schools has a halftime TDP teacher, one of these lovely people, and there's others watching us at home, who meets with the students for a minimum of 90 minutes per week per subject. And finally, the total number of students in TDP. We do service nearly 20% of all the students in 3rd through 5th grades, which is about approximately 20 to 40 students per school. All right. Next, this is the TDP is a critical component of our MTSS system. And so you may be used to seeing MTSS as a triangle, right? With the green at the bottom, the yellow, and then the red at the top of the triangle. what we've done, and this is not a District 59 thing, but a nationwide thing, is to kind of put the triangle on its side and instead create a diamond, because you'll see the green in the middle then is our Tier 1 instruction. And then we have students in need of intervention, and they're yellow and are red on the left of the screen. And then we have students in need of additional challenge beyond the core. And so we're servicing our students in a continuum there, which includes differentiation within the classroom, of course. It includes our talent development program. And then it also includes the acceleration process, where students can be provided single subject or whole grade acceleration after going through a process. And that process is, can be initiated by any person, and is in line with the Illinois Acceleration Act. All right. Wanted to give a little bit of background about what a talent development sort of paradigm is versus a gifted education paradigm, because that's where sometimes we have a little bit of confusion on what our program is, who it services is, and what the purpose of it is. And our talent development program review committee spent a lot of time digging into this as well. And so I do have that source listed on the page where you can find a lengthy article, but we just kind of picked out the most relevant pieces here. So when you're looking at what is giftedness in a talent development model, giftedness is something that is malleable, it's flexible, and it can grow and develop over time. Whereas through a strictly gifted education model, that is, you have high ability across all context areas, and you're pretty much born with it. It's inherent, you have it or you don't. You can see just by that how our talent development model opens it up for more students to be involved. And that's why we have in District 59 chosen this model of instruction for our students for our advanced learners. Who are the students served? You can see that in a talent development model, you can have potential in one area, in multiple areas, whereas students served in a gifted program, it's based on general intelligence. So an IQ test or an ability test would get you those kinds of services. The program in a talent development program, it's an exploratory, it's giving students experiences to explore their talents, domains, and to develop those skills over time. Whereas in a gifted education model, your goal is higher level thinking, leadership development. And again, you're in the program or you're not, based on a very static piece of information. And services provided through talent development include enrichment and acceleration, whereas in a gifted model, you're usually looking at a self-contained or replacement model where students are taken from the general classroom and put in a specialized program or classroom for those who qualify. So again, all of those pieces, we looked at both of those paradigms and thought for our population, for our students here in District 59, we really feel the talent development model serves our community the best way.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
For the part where it says potential area in math, reading, music, do we only offer math and reading? Oh, yeah.
Yes, we do not have, so students can be talented in many, many ways, but for our program, it's going to be in the two academic areas. Thank you for asking.
And that extends into the middle schools as well. So it just sticks with math and reading.
Yeah.
There's no science or social studies as you go.
No.
Okay.
Will you describe the criteria at all for selection in your presentation? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I talked about we engaged in a year-long review. How we started with the NAGC, which is the National Association of Gifted Children. They have a booklet that gives you programming standards. So we started with those standards, and our TDP team took a self-assessment and determined that the areas that we felt were most important for us to review were in those 4 areas listed: student identification, service delivery, curriculum, and communication. So again, this was all based upon the standards provided by the NAGC, and then we made it our own based on what our strengths and areas for growth were. And so Jody is going to take us through those areas and talk about current structures, and then we'll move into what our next steps are. So,
Okay, is that better? So for identification, we use a multi-criteria approach. So we want to make sure that we're getting data from different sources, different kinds of data. We have 2 universal screeners that we use, the iReady diagnostic that you're very familiar with, and then also the cognitive ability test, COGAT for short. And that tests the students' ability, their potential for school success. So it's a much different test than an achievement test. And through those 2 universal screeners, meaning all students take those tests. So we don't have any roadblocks that say only if you score a certain percentile on the achievement test can you then take the ability test. So all students take that. This year we've moved to 3rd and 5th grade in the fall. Students are taking it right now. And then the third piece that we use is we get performance information from the classroom teachers or any teacher, any staff member that might know the student and recognize something in the student. They can fill out what is called a HOPE rating scale. And the HOPE stands for Having Opportunities Promotes Excellence. And this scale was developed specifically to widen the net, to hope to get a broader range of students than perhaps maybe typical behaviors that a teacher might be used to seeing in a high ability or high achieving student. On the HOPE rating scale, there are 2 areas that are assessed, both academic and social. So that is our classroom performance piece. And also we encourage everyone to be talent scouts. So anyone from a PE teacher to a speech and language pathologist to the classroom teacher, anyone who interacts through a club, anyone who interacts with the kids can fill those out at any time. Okay, one other thing that's important, I think Ms. Notini probably as well, for the identification. So when we look at our data, we are looking at students who score in the 85th percentile or higher on both the iReady and the COGAT. The COGAT has 3 different batteries. So they have a nonverbal, a verbal, and a quantitative. So we look at those a little bit separately. Because the student may have a strength in a verbal ability and not a quantitative ability or nonverbal ability. And our IT department here wonderfully creates norms for us. So when you get the reports at home, you're seeing national norms. So because our teaching is very specific to the community that's in front of us, we have calculated school building norms. So each school has its own norm groups based on those assessments. We also have district norms that are generated kind of for just comparison's sake. And we used those in the past historically. But in the field, best practice, especially for a community like ours that is very diverse in its population, not only as a district, but within the district, the school building norms are really what is going to spot that talent and enable us to service the students as they need in that school.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
If for some reason, and now this is my personal story here, and
Sure.
it sounds like some things have changed, but if your student just misses by a little bit, like one piece of that COGAT test, that's my story. My child's had a composite score of 97, but one piece of the COGAT was a little low and said, sorry, not in TDP. And we just couldn't get past it. Is that not happening anymore? Are we trying to look at each individual situation and decide if it's a good fit because of all the other criteria, the teacher recommendations? Are we more flexible now?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Yes.
I would say overall, yes. The COGAT is very important for us because that is indicative of what the student is capable of achieving. The iReady may not be showing that achievement yet. So we want to make sure that we are getting those kids services who have that potential and then continue that growth. So what I would say is, yes, we look at those percentiles, we look at the 85th and higher, but that said, there are always situations where teachers will come to us and say, oh, but this kid, maybe it was just, a bad experience on that test, that, those 3 days. Or so we have worked into our process. We have the ability for retests if something, if a situation would require that. We have a process that we go through. We also, something we're really proud of as a team, we've built in, and maybe this could speak to your personal situation a little bit, but we have built in critical thinking skills lessons. So for kids that don't quite meet that 85th percentile, but the classroom teacher says, oh, but I see this in them. And the iReady says, oh, we see it. And the COGAT just isn't quite there. Maybe it's 80th percentile. Then we're able to look at those kids and say, okay, let's give them these critical thinking skills lessons. So not content based, but thinking based. And let's see how they do with those. And then we analyze those. We talk to the teacher a little bit more. And then we have ways to provide students services, whether it is within the classroom by the classroom teacher, or if through all that whole process, if it's determined, okay, the scores don't show up, but this kid needs it, then we have a way to allow that student to at first maybe try it out, see how it's going for a period of time, because remember we'll get to this in a minute, but it is a pull-out program, so they are missing part of their course. So that's always something that we consider as well. It's usually during win time, but so sometimes it could be just like on a flexible basis. Let's see how they do. Are things okay? What do we feel as the talent development program teachers? Is this a good fit for them? And then they can be identified formally that way as well.
So I think the answer is yes. We're ultimately more flexible.
More flexible.
And just know that with my daughter, the stars aligned to the next COGAT test, and sky's the limit after that. So I just feel like I wish it wasn't so difficult that her second grade COGAT test. Glad to hear it's third now. Kind of decided things for her.
Yeah, and you're right. We moved from second grade to third grade for those reasons, right? Those cases.
So can I ask a question on the universal screeners? What languages are those screeners in? The COGAT in particular, I'm not aware of.
So the COGAT, in the verbal battery, the questions themselves are English. So the words are all
English only.
English only. Okay. However, the directions can be read in 9 different languages, including English. So you kind of have to, decide. We have some kids who are taking it now who are hearing the directions in Russian and then taking the test. If they take the verbal test, they are taking it with the English words. However, in the quantitative and the nonverbal, there are no words. So they can hear the directions in their language that's available, and then they're doing the computation and the thinking without being English dependent. In situations where we have kids who are newcomers and it would cause them undue stress to take, even if they're hearing the directions in their native language, to have to think about words in English, they can be opted out of that verbal part and then take it at another time when they have acquired more English.
But the nonverbal part is also a path into talent development.
Correct. Okay. For our English learners. Yes. Correct. Yes. Yes. Okay. So our service delivery, our current practice is that students are pulled out of their classroom, and they can qualify for services in math, reading, or both, depending on their strength areas. So they receive these services through their whole time in elementary school, starting as early as third grade. The services are provided for a minimum of 90 minutes per week per subject. And ideally, the students are pulled for these services during their win time for math and their small group time for reading. They receive these services in addition to their core curriculum, so we are not replacing their core curriculum. And then also, just as Dr. Robinson shared, that all second grade students receive push-in services, where we conduct 3 different lessons, 3 different types of critical thinking skills lessons with those students over 8 to 10 lessons. So 10 weeks-ish with all our second grade classes. For our curriculum is standard-based. It's based on the Common Core state standards, both the math and the reading curriculum, and it is typically at least 1 year beyond grade level in our standards. Our math curriculum is designed around 4 different focus areas: number systems, ratios and proportional reasoning, operations and algebraic thinking, and geometry. And our curriculum right now, as it stands, allows for both acceleration and enrichment. So we do teach at a higher level, but we go deeper within those topics. And then our reading curriculum is really an enrichment curriculum. We do address some standards at the higher grade level, such as in 4th grade, we teach the kids how to debate, and they hold a debate with each other and then against another school in the district. It offers a lot of choice, and we're really looking for that deeper, complex thinking when it comes to reading.
So can I ask a quick question about the curriculum? It sounds like the answer would be yes, but if you're getting into the program based on your school, so naturally some schools will just test lower and you'll get into that 85% without being able to do as much, right? So you can dial it down for a school like that and then dial it up for another school. So, but then, so we're leaving out students who would benefit from this at certain schools who are performing higher overall.
You speak
I'm
very well to that.
I'm not sure. I just want to make sure I understand. I'm sorry.
So the 85%
ahead.
threshold used to be district-wide
Oh,
to get
yes.
into the program, but now it's school-wide.
Yes.
So if I'm at just a naturally higher performing school, I
Oh,
might
yes.
not have access to the TDP program.
I see what you're saying. Yes. Perhaps that might be the case. But the research shows and the best practices are based on, because that school as a whole is is filled with higher performing students, higher ability students, the classroom core is the teachers are able to teach to a higher core. And so the kids presumably would get what they need in the core curriculum. However, back to Ms. Notini, we do have situations where we have kids just consistently performing at very high levels, particularly on the iReady. And so those situations we do take on an individual basis. And I would be hard pressed to find a situation where it's like, boom, this is the score. No, that's not meeting students' needs. So we are looking at those situations individually. But to summarize, yes, there could be some students who with the district norm would qualify for services who no longer might.
It kind of mirrors the intervention approach as well. So if a student needs something that is outside what they can get in the core, which could look different based on the students who are in that classroom, then we're going to give that to them. So it's all based on the environment that they're in, and that's kind of best practice in the field right now.
And the curriculum is flexible enough for some schools aren't going as deep into the curriculum as other schools.
In the TDP curriculum?
Right.
I wouldn't say they are not going as deep. I think maybe they might go a little bit more slowly, or they might, I think there's a misconception that a talent development or a gifted program, all the kids in that class are all the same. They're all high achieving, they're all ready to go and, able to achieve at the same level. And that's not the case. We have as much diversity within our small groups of students as there is as a whole. So we have teachers who, we have maybe a novel study that, we want to make sure we're addressing this theme or this certain essential question. And a teacher at one school might say, okay, I'm going to choose a different book because it's more appropriate for my learners, but we're still asking them those higher level questions, but maybe with a different source. So in that way, yes, we scaffold, we are very flexible with how we achieve our outcomes based on the kids who are in front of us. And some of us need to go way beyond, maybe with one student.
Right. But the outcomes are all the same, consistent across the whole program.
Are families advised of this program at the curriculum nights?
Families of kids who have already been identified, or just as
Just
a
in
whole?
general.
Well, that takes you to our next
Oh,
slide.
sorry. I should have read ahead. Okay.
So our current practice with curriculum, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. Okay, thank you. With communication is that we do communicate in multiple ways. We have a district website that gives people tons of information. We do have a parent information slideshow that is shared with newly identified families. That's our current practice. We have progress reports that go home twice a year that are narrative in style, that are personalized to each student. And we give presentations to the building staff as needed, or we touch base, with teachers as needed as well. And then we have informal communications between us and the parents as needed. Some of us send, monthly newsletters or whatever it might be. And then also we participate at conferences. So to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure my question was answered.
Well,
We're getting there.
Yeah, as of right now, no. But may I move on? Okay. So some results of our review, and it will be on the next slide, Ms. Notini. But some results. Through our committee, we worked with an expert in the field, Laura Belchenko, and she is very experienced in the field of gifted education, and she currently serves on the Illinois State Board of Education Gifted Advisory Council. She's a frequent presenter at gifted conferences. So she was really helping to guide us through this process as a committee. Very proud to say that we have some areas of strength. We're very fortunate to have monthly collaboration meetings amongst us as TDP teachers. They're called Job Alike, so we have those monthly.
I'm just going to stop her right there because she skipped over the first bullet point, which is strong teacher leadership, which includes Jody is an amazing leader of the team. So thank you for letting me shout her out there.
Thank you. Something that the team and I and Nicole, all of us are very proud of is that we have really come close to achieving the top of what you can achieve as far as equitable identification practices. There's probably more that we could do, but we have been and are way ahead of most districts in regard to equitable identification practices, really knowing who our community is and figuring out ways to find the talent and service those students. So we also have annually, we're able to attend the Illinois Association for Gifted Children, IAGC conference. And we have, this spoke to, I think, the last slide a little bit too. We do all have common learning targets, but we do have that autonomy to reach those targets in different ways with our resources. So our opportunities or areas for growth. Also, we're very excited about all of this. The team and I and Dr. Robinson and Susan for a very, very long time have known that there are areas that we can grow. And it's been really nice, particularly within the last 5 years, to be able to do some things to move us forward. We knew it needed to happen. It just wasn't yet. And now we have been able to. So some continued areas for growth. We really want to be able to collaborate with the classroom teachers. We don't have an opportunity to meet with them as a team, to talk about the kids. Usually it's when some sort of issue pops up. We don't get to share all the good things usually because it's not built in. So we hope to have more of that. We also want, and maybe one way we could do that is to be involved with the MTSS process. We are part of their students' intervention, so to speak. So we would like to be a part of those meetings and share things and hear things. We also, one of a huge area for growth for us is to build understanding of the talent development program across the entire system. So that's a huge one, but we're ready to tackle it. We have some ideas, and that's something we're going to be working on. That also goes with the communication amongst all stakeholders. I think, Ms. Notini, that speaks to what you were talking about. It is my personal belief that families who come into the district should know about all the programs we offer, and that includes the talent development program. I don't feel that you should have to wait until your child is identified to know that this even exists. So we've already been talking about some plans to improve that. And then we are working on our curriculum. We worked a little bit over the summer. Most of the team got together over the summer and made some tweaks to our curriculum, but we are also looking to our district leadership in the areas of math and eventually reading. We have already planned out some professional development for this whole year with Michelle Benages to help us really get a little more focused with our math and make sure that our students, by the time they get to 8th grade, are algebra ready. And we also really need to identify some indicators of success. We know and feel that the kids are successful, their families share that they're successful, but we don't have those actual indicators that show success of the services. So that is something that we also need to do.
So taking account all of those areas, we developed a 3-year action plan. This first year, we've got a lot here going on. We are going to look at our identification process for those students with consistently high achievement, but maybe who are not making that, showing that on the COGAT. So how can we support them when they have needs outside of the tier 1 instruction? Also engaging in professional learning around math, which Jody just mentioned. And then after we engage in that professional learning, then adapting the math curriculum to align with those best practices and ensuring that the continuum is there for our junior high courses. So our students matriculating to 6th grade have the experiences that they need to be successful in whatever course they're placed in 6th grade. Also exploring opportunities right now to provide accelerated math courses to 5th grade students. Currently, we have a few students who are going to the junior high actually this year we do not, but last year we had a few and next year we'll have another few going to the junior high to receive math at the 6th grade level. But if we can explore ways to provide that within the elementary setting, that would be great for our students. Social emotional piece would be taken care of then as well. But again, we're exploring that because of the differences in our schools. It is difficult to find a consistent process for that to happen when there's differences, as you know. Also increasing communication, that's starting this year about TDP to all families and staff. And then TDP teacher involvement, we're going to find ways to get them to those MTSS meetings to support those learners on the other end of the diamond. Then next year, again, I'm changing my computer, but not yours. Again, a lot on our plate, but we can do it. We're considering an alternative pathway for identification. A lot of places have an additional piece of identification like portfolios, where students who just aren't showing what they know on assessments can be included. Also, the potential pilot of that 5th grade accelerated math course that we're exploring this year. And then shifting our learning to literacy instruction and then adapting our reading curriculum to align with that, just as we're doing for math this year. And then incorporating more SEL lessons into our reading curriculum. Our students who are in the TDP have social emotional needs that may be outside the what's happening in the core. And so we're going to include those, and we already have established those, but just incorporate more. Then including ways to increase services or at least exposures to talent development for primary students. We'll be creating a family brochure once our curricular changes have been made. We'll be revising the website as a result of that, and then proactively communicating information at our district events when appropriate. So kindergarten information night, when they come into the district, we're telling them about all the programs, literacy nights, and et cetera. And then finally, the last year of our 3-year timeline is just very sparse, but that's because we'll inform that 3rd year based on how our 1st and 2nd year go. We'll develop more SEL lessons there. We'll continue the expansion of those opportunities for primary students, and then consider, based on the results of our pilot, a full implementation of an accelerated math course for 5th grade students, in addition to the TDP math. So that would be in addition to what we currently have. And that is all we have for you. You've been asking questions all along, but if you have any others, please feel free.
Yeah, so there are other subjects besides math and reading. Did you explore looking into music or trying to identify music learners earlier? Because I know we don't really start till 5th grade, or in the sciences. I have to ask about STEM in general.
Yes. No, our review did not go into those other areas. Right now, we are doing, at the elementary, we have integrated science and social science within our literacy block. So when we're talking reading, we are talking those content areas. That might be something for further discussion, though, for sure.
Have there ever had to have been like caps instituted? Like you have so many kids who test in that you can.
No.
Okay.
We will fit them,
Yeah.
whether our classroom is in the lounge or wherever it is. No, we don't have caps on that. Nope.
I think that's a good point, because I feel like we focus so much on, the bottom 20% in the MTSS model. So like to know that we're doing this for, was it top 19% or so. So if you ever find yourself needing additional resources, we know the space limitations and such, but please let us know, because continuing to push students to grow beyond what they're doing. We don't ever want somebody to top out in what they're learning. So
Exactly
and
right.
obviously you all know that, and that's what you're supporting, but it's good to hear that.
What is your average class size for a TDP group?
Very.
It does range. Let me see if that's something I have pulled up
And
right
I feel
here.
because after third grade, or in the past when they were identified in second grade and they take it again in fourth grade, or our continuing process to open the testing window and continue to look at kids individually, the numbers get higher and higher. So third grade tends to start out smaller. Then fourth grade, there's a few more, and by fifth grade, it's one of our larger groups.
You don't have to give it. Maybe
Yeah,
like
it's,
okay,
you know, I
8
just-
to 20.
I can go up to 20. You're
Yes,
saying?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
because
for
I
sure.
do recall, like in my son's group, he had, maybe 12 to 14 kids in the class, and my daughter's group was like 3.
Yeah.
And
Whoever's identified, that's the group at that grade level in that school, right? So we make it work for whoever is needed.
If I could just, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I have to say that I really like the push-in critical thinking lessons, because that's something that my son did have. And if we can push those in even lower, that would be great, because you have those kids that, the word bored is not the word. Like, we know that they're not truly bored, but you have those kids that know this stuff. If you could just give a few things that are really making them think differently. Really helps them
it's
out.
all about thinking differently. That's what
Mhm.
those lessons are really about, is to think differently, think divergently, and develop those skills that may not be there in their everyday life.
So you test in third grade and then again in fifth grade. Do you test in the middle school?
No, there's no COGAT in the middle school currently.
Got you. So
And we don't have a talent development program in the middle school. So in our junior highs, we have accelerated courses, and those are solely on the iReady and teacher the performance factors.
That's the junior high.
Mhm.
Okay, so junior
Yes.
high is dependent on just iReady scores.
iReady and teacher.
And
We
teacher.
also look at IAR scores and things like that for kids who are right on the cusp.
But that's like kind of a new placement
Correct.
in sixth grade or going
Yes.
into sixth grade. Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to share one other thing, just in thinking about getting us involved in that MTSS process, because we have students who are perhaps not achieving in one area, we'll say math, but are receiving services through the talent development program in reading. And so those there's a term for that. It's called twice exceptionality, or 2E. So it's really important too for us and the COGAT test. When you see the reports come home, you will see this, but it approaches the child from a strengths-based approach, not from a deficit-based approach. And so that's what we're really looking to do. Like, what can these kids do? And when we go into those second grade classrooms, sometimes the teachers are so surprised that a certain student had a certain way of thinking about something. And it's like, yes, you can see them a little differently because we're not teaching the content, we're teaching thinking skills. So that's another reason for the MTSS that would be really good.
just very excited for the accelerated math course in fifth grade. I think that would be very welcome because, as a parent of kids who were in the sixth grade accelerated, it's just such a big leap, and to just get that started earlier. Is that something you hope that every school will offer?
We're going to start with a pilot, see how we can manage that. Again, it's about how many teachers there are, how many students qualify at each of the schools, and how can we make that happen. So we're going to figure out a way to, to make it work. But considering that full implementation would not be for a couple of years. So we'll give us some time to work that out.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next up, 5.05, the dual language assessments.
Busy night. Need some coffee. Oh, I got this. Which one is over? Is it the middle? Okay. All right. Good evening. So we are here tonight to present an update on where we are with our dual language programming, to share an overview of the improvements that we have been making, some of the areas that are going to be our focus for this year, including the focus on assessments, talk a little bit about some data, and then have some further discussion. So in order to kind of refresh and just kind of set the tone, especially with some new board members, once again, we want to keep in mind those pillars of dual language that are continuing to be our foundation as we look at our programming and the structures of our programming, which are bilingualism, biliteracy, of course, grade level academic achievement, and cross-cultural competence. So those are the areas, and think about those tonight as we start to talk about assessment, because we need to make sure that we have assessment measures, like we talked about TDP, how are we measuring that program, that really will measure these critical components of dual language. So as a look this year, here's where we currently have our dual language programming. So we have them, and as you see, Brentwood is the one that we say phasing out to Frost, but we have Bird, Spanish dual language, and where you see blended, that is where we have those formerly called two-way, but really it's more accurately depicted of what our school classroom makeups are. So we've got Salt Creek, of course we have Polish at Claremont, Rupley, and then blended at Jay, blended at Low, and at Brentwood phasing out, and then Robert Frost, Spanish dual language.
And then there's 10 grade schools, not including Ridge?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then just to recap, things that we have shared prior for everyone's sake with some, shifting board members for everyone's awareness. Thinking about Illinois School Code requires the establishment of a program that provides bilingual services where there are 20 or more in any one language classification. So this is something that we keep our eye on in all languages every year. And in District 59, we always talk about dual language is the model that we have. We talk about how our demographics warrant that model. And that's because most of our schools have 20, almost all of our schools have 20 or more in the Spanish language. And then I want to share something as well for the board's awareness around the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. That is a new plan that was launched last school year. Very excited about this plan. And we are in very solid alignment with our restructuring of our literacy curriculum. But I do want to note that they do have values and guidance from the state. And one of the 5 is that every learner has the right to develop literacy in 2 or more languages, hence that multilingual focus, to prepare for success in our global world. So that plan is guidance that we're getting from the state. And it really is, it was a multi-year project, and all schools are looking at that now moving forward.
So there, sorry, 20 or more in a given school.
Correct.
Okay.
You got
And
it.
you guys don't have anywhere yet where there is 20 or more like Russian speakers?
We do.
Yeah,
We
okay.
do. Mhm.
Okay.
We have a couple of situations, and we provide. I'll let him get into that a little bit more, and Dr. Perdomo will get into that in a little
Can I
second.
just ask something so I don't forget? So 20 or more in a given school required, but it's not required within that school?
It's required. Yeah, I'll let you. Yeah.
So when you have 20 or more of the same language within the school, bilingual services have to be offered. So like in our district, for example, when we have Spanish dual language as an option for our families, so I'll give you the example of Forest View. So if we have 20 or more students with that language, those families are given the opportunity, the option to either take ESL or dual language as their bilingual model of service. If they choose not to have Spanish, we are still required to have bilingual supports available in the school if the need and the request from any family or parent, we have to have it accessible to them. So that could be in the form of staff members, that can be in the form of translation devices, depending on what's available to our families. Also, because it's a TBE, because they've reached that capacity of 20, they have to have literacy available to them again in the language if they were to want it. Now, that's where we are, in compliance, because again, our families have the option to choose dual language as a model, and some families may choose to do ESL instead. So they all have the opportunity to receive that in their language. Polish, we have the Polish dual language program. Where it does get a little bit tricky is when we have languages like Russian, which we do have, and Ukrainian. At Forest View specifically, we have those two languages that are exceeding the 20 or more. So that is where we did put out to try to hire a ESL staff member who was Ukrainian and Russian. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful to find that right candidate. So the posting is still live, and we're actively trying to engage in getting that.
So they have some support in the school, but like the dual language program does not have to be ubiquitous across every school if you hit that 20 mark.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So Dr. Perdomo will go into this a little bit, but we talked about all of the work that we've been doing internally. So really, when we met with our dual language leadership team and went through the dual language audit, we use guiding principles from the Center for Applied Linguistics. This is what we look at, which is the model that districts use to determine whether their program is being effective. These would be the conditions that need to be met in order to have a valid program. So we're going to kind of talk through. You can see here, black is program structure, just for ease of looking at it there. That is what we continue to come back. We've had discussion with the board. The way that we're currently structured is causing some difficulty for us. And all of the recommendations we've had is that consolidation of some form would be beneficial for us. If you look at curriculum, instruction, staff quality, support, and resources, those are all areas that we have worked tremendously hard on the last 2 years. So those we feel like they're ongoing, but they have been a major initiative and a major heavy lift. Huge thank you to all of our dual language teachers who have been working tirelessly on all of these, have been a huge part of our dual language leadership team in making this shift forward. And then assessment and accountability and family and community, this is this year's primary focus. And I will let Dr. Perdomo talk through some of this.
Yeah, so as we look through the guiding principles, when we start with that program structure, it's really that foundation. So when we have met as a dual language leadership team, it's really thinking through how can we provide opportunities or options of what does that foundation look like for us in order to build the robust program that we want to have, to be able to provide the results that we want to provide, to ensure that our students are reaching those 3 pillars. And being able to be, academically ready. And that's where we ultimately want, that's why it's in black and it's asterisk, because that's where we need that involvement and the commitment from the board as well, because we can't do that part alone. We really need the community, the board, and that collective commitment all together to be able to do that. But then when we look at curriculum, some of the pieces that we did have with curriculum, this is our second year of an authentic literacy resource. In the past, I think the one piece that we want to be transparent on is we are reflective of what we had for dual language was not being as effective as it could have been. And that's why we're making the changes that we're making to really ensure that we're giving our students the best opportunities to be successful. So when we have that second, it's our second year of implementation of that curricular resource, it's that authenticity of the Spanish, where in the past we were doing translations of all English materials were being translated into Spanish. When we do a translation, lexile changes, the validity changes, depending on who's doing those translations can really impact the whole aspect of what our students are getting. So now we have that curriculum, which comes with professional development, which also comes with assessments, which comes with opportunities for our teachers to be able to fully have resources at their fingertips to be able to plan more effectively and really deliver that core grade level content, which we had not been able to do. When we also look at, and that's not just in literacy, we're also have been able to look at integrating our content of science and social sciences within the literacy. We know that science and social sciences is so heavy with literacy. We want to make sure that those skills are being embedded throughout the content lessons that we're doing. And then math is being selective in when we're looking at all of our curricular resources, is identifying those that are supporting all of our multilingual learners. In this case, speaking of dual language, but we're also looking at how does it support our ESL students who also choose not to be in dual language. How are we making sure that we're picking curricular resources that impact all multilingual learners? When we look at instruction in the sense of dual language, I think a big focus of ours that has been is how do we ensure that the biliteracy opportunity, that students are truly learning English as well as Spanish. And one of the pieces that we really have looked at is kindergarten, first grade, second grade are crucial years of early literacy foundational skills. And the way you learn to read and write in English is very different than how you read and write in Spanish. And it is imperative, and it is part of the commitment of dual language to ensure that those are being, that aspect of foundational literacy skills is being taught every single day. So our focus in kindergarten and first grade, that entire English block of time is dedicated to our students getting those foundational skills in English. But even better than that is that we ensure that we're making those cross-linguistic connections between Spanish and English so that we don't have to take a double dose of teaching that the letter M makes the same sound in Spanish and in English, but it's making those connections so students start to see and be able to then apply and enhance their learning through that process. So that opportunity is just very much more intentional in how we are teaching in our instruction, and then through our process, through our day and our scheduling as well. When we look at, I'm going to skip 4 and 6 because those are our highlights for this year. When we look at staff quality and professional development, we have been also working on ensuring that all of our teachers have the opportunities to really, truly understand and get back to the basics of what is dual language and revamp and revitalize what it's supposed to be to ensure that we're all on the same playing field. We've had, new teachers come into our district. We have a lot of veteran teachers, and we want to make sure that they continue to get the most up-to-date practices in dual language and being effective in that. This past summer, we had the privilege of bringing in Dr. Jose Medina, who really then was able to recapture. We had a session for our administrators and for our dual language teachers. And it was in the summer, so it was those that could attend. And we're looking to ways to replicate that professional development throughout the year so that all teachers can have that opportunity as well. But it was really getting to that focus of what are the goals of dual language and how do we ensure that within the system that we have, we're giving our students the best opportunities possible. And then supporting resources, our team has been really reflective of how do we ensure that all of our students are getting not only those tangible resources, but also through personnel. We've had conversations in the past with the board about how we don't have bilingual interventionists. This year we have bilingual interventionists. Not one in every single building, but we're working towards that model, right? We're looking at who our students are and giving them, if they need their intervention in Spanish, they have those opportunities to get it from a certified staff member instead of an ESP who has been what we have done in past practice. And then, so 4 and 6, going back to that, assessment and accountability, that's a huge goal of ours, right? And we want to make sure that if we're continuously saying that regardless of our program model, whatever our program model is, we want to ensure that we are holding us accountable to what is success for our families, for our students, and for us as professionals. So we are looking at what are the assessments we have in place? How do they support dual language? How do they support and give us the data that's accurate to make those educational decisions for our families? And some of those crucial conversations that, is dual language working? Is it working for all students? And if it's not, then how do we support and implement? And if it is, how do we continue to elevate? So it's using that data for all aspects of it, for TDP purposes, for intervention purposes, and then just to serve our core as well. So you'll see we're gonna share some data with that. And then family and community, that's one of my biggest passions is I know, and I say but I know the whole MLP department wants that. We want to make sure that our families from all languages feel like they're part of our community and they're part of our district and their voices are being heard. We strive to work through the Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee, BPAC. We started the first year when we did that, we were doing it during the evenings and we saw that we just weren't really getting the turnout that we wanted. So this past year, we made it a point to change them to Saturdays. That's a dedication of us as staff. I'm more than happy to come out on Saturdays, and I've loved seeing the turnout from our families. It's what our community wanted. We put out a survey and asked them what day would work for them. They chose that. We delivered that. So we want to continue to ask our community what they want, and being able to produce more opportunities for them to share their voice and be a part of that.
Could I just share? BPAC is on November 2nd. And if you haven't been to a BPAC event, you will see that it is a passion of his. It's quite the event. And it is open to all families. So that was a shift that Dr. Bernome was like, I don't want to send this invite out to dual only. It's invite all. And we have seen some really great turnout with families of all of our programming. And there's lots of activities for students and opportunities to learn more about. We always like to use that time too to like share some information with families. So it's super fun. November 2nd, mark your calendars.
Yeah, and I appreciate that plug. And part of this commitment and goal is not just to make fun events, right? We want our families to come out and make fun events, but the next step in that is how do we continue to educate our families and provide those opportunities to bring the fun, but also educate. And that's that next level that we're looking to do this year and moving forward. So it'll still be a fun event, but we want to start to put in some of that education in there as well.
Can I ask 2 questions before you move into the assessments? I'm excited to hear about the assessments, but I just have 2 questions based on some of the things that you just said. So the curriculum, you described grade level curriculum. What if our students are behind grade level? How do the materials you have support them in their learning?
Yeah, so first and foremost is we want to make sure that all students have access to their grade level curriculum, but then we also want to make sure that our teachers are prepared and our curricular resources are developed in a way where they can provide scaffolds and differentiation for our students. And that's where even if that is not enough for our students, we want to make sure that they have those opportunities to potentially receive interventions. And that's when we start to look at what is that language of intervention that student might need. So we look at a variety of data points, iReady, we look at formative and summative assessments that teachers are given in the classroom, we look at some of our Spanish assessments, and then we determine, okay, is this student showing, they may not be showing this knowledge yet in English, but they're able to do these skills in Spanish. So how do we transfer that over so that they have that opportunity? Or we might see they're not able to do it in either language, and therefore we really need to ensure that they can give that robust opportunity in one language over the other. So our through our data and then through our grade level curriculum, there are opportunities for scaffold reteaching and enrichment opportunities through that process so that all students are able to meet. We also have a small group time in our schedule that occurs every single day for all of our with all of our students, and that is again to give them that what they need in that moment of time. So that small group time is dedicated to really differentiating instruction for all students.
And I'll add that is universal across all classrooms, not just specific to dual language.
Okay, and my other question was going back to your discussion that the kindergarten, first, second grade are critical periods. What if a student comes to our district, needing, language services in like 4th grade, and they may have missed that critical, do they go into dual language? Do we try to explain to them that since they've missed that core, that maybe an ESL or another model would be better?
Yeah, so fantastic question. Yeah, so all of our families have a choice. There is no one size fits all. So when we look at a student, so that 4th grade example that you're providing, we have one-to-one conversations with the family, and we want to look at the academic history of that child. So for example, if we see that student is coming into us and they've only been in an English-only classroom, we can't deny the parent the opportunity to be in dual language, but we also want to make sure that we're educating them and giving them the implications of what are going to be the productive struggles that your child's going to have being in a dual language setting, not having that exposure of Spanish for the last 3 years in your career. And therefore, we also have an ESL program that might fit the model as you have been more successful in or been in it historically. So this might be the path you would go into. So it's not, we definitely don't make decisions for our families, but we want to educate them and give them all the pros and the cons of what each program can offer them so that they can make the best decision possible. And I will say that most families, once we do have those conversations, they will choose the path that they have been in the past, because they know that that's probably going to be most successful for their student at that opportunity in time.
Thank you for that. Because, I've been in a few meetings the last week or so with all of you, and I'm hearing just kind of different things. Like, we can't tell parents what to do. This is the program we have, and this is what we tell them. I feel that choice is critical, especially going through this transition, the improvements that you're making. Just want parents to understand, and especially if they're not coming into kindergarten. I think ideally kindergartners coming in with this newly revamped program have the best shot, but those who have been here, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, worry about them. So
yeah, and I want to echo that again, every family does have a choice when they come into our district. Our job is to ensure whichever model or program that they use, they're successful. Even if they choose to deny services, they have that right as well. and we're still going to try to make them successful and work to make them successful, not try and work to make them successful. That's our goal.
But I think the point to clarify that we want to really ensure there is clarity on is that any child that qualifies for services is entitled to those services. And there would never be anything that we would do to disqualify them for a program. We will educate on what the options are for all of our families. But Dr. Perdomo, can reiterate that point for me, please, because I think that what families are entitled to, and we've had those situations. You educate, you put it out there. I want this. I want dual. I don't want dual, whatever that is. And then we are obligated to support them, whatever that choice is. And I think that's a real point of clarification that I want to make sure everyone feels really secure in knowing that that's what we are obligated to do. And that's what they are entitled to.
Yeah, and that goes for Spanish and for Polish because we have in our system developed a dual language program for both. And because that is our bilingual model, and we meet the definition because we are able to produce literacy instruction in both languages, we are obligated to provide it to families if they want it and they're entitled to it. So that's when the family comes in, if it is a fourth grade family and they say, I want dual language, I'm a Spanish speaking household, and I want to be in the program, they're entitled to that opportunity and I cannot deny them those services. Legally, they can and they should receive their bilingual supports if that's what they're asking for.
But they are made aware of what their options are.
Yes, they're always made aware of all of the options that they have.
What about a family that's been in the program, in dual language program since kindergarten, and they're maybe third, fourth grade now, maybe not doing very well? Do we revisit that conversation?
Yeah, so if we go to the next slide with the assessments, we can I can build off of that a little bit more. So in our assessments for dual language, we have iReady. And in iReady, our students do take it in English, and they have the assessment of Spanish reading as well. So that is a literacy assessment that they take in both languages, and that gives us the data where our students are towards that trajectory of building those literacy skills in both languages. We've also in the last 3 years implemented loss links and pre-loss. The intention behind that pre-loss is an assessment that's given to our kindergarten students to understand a baseline of where they're coming in with Spanish, because the misconception has been that student marks yes on the home language survey for Spanish, that they're bilingual. They're not bilingual all the time. And sometimes they have Spanish as a home language, but the child doesn't know Spanish. So yet. And so what we do is we give that pre-loss so that our teachers are more well-informed of who are the students that are in front of them. And that's why we talked about that two-way versus the blended, because a lot of our demographics now is we do have some, but we don't have a full large population of all native Spanish speaking students that are coming in scoring at 4s and 5s, which is the highest level of the Spanish language assessment you can get. And so what we're having is a lot of students that are coming in as simultaneous bilinguals scoring at a 1 or 2 in both English and in Spanish. And that then shows us that we're trying to develop those simultaneous bilingual students and provide them that. That gives our teachers the opportunity to better understand who's in front of them and how to serve them in a more impactful way of knowing, here's the language that they're coming in, and this is where I have to meet our students at this point in time.
Can I just ask real quick about the level they're coming in at? So 1 through 5 is the scale. What would, and it's given in as they come in through kindergarten, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what would what's an average score? Like what's normal for a kindergartner in English or Spanish?
So I don't know if there's necessarily an average, because everyone's language path is very different and based on a lot of different factors of where they're coming in from. If we see students that have come through our ELC and they've been in a dual language program and they've been exposed to Spanish, they may come in with an average of a 2 or 3. But the path of Spanish is very different for each student, that it's hard to give an average all that. Even in English, when we have students that come in English, they're all over the spectrum, and that deals with their prior history of preschool. Were they in daycare? What supports are they receiving at home? What supports are they getting within the community? So it very much varies.
And there's various domains.
Yes.
And so the domains could be, you might have a very high score in speaking. So you see, oh, there's definitely something going on at home. They use this language, but then you can see that reading. What are the domains?
So in kindergarten, we only do measure oracy. So listening and speaking in both languages. we don't, the state does not require us to do any literacy. So we don't do writing, we don't do reading at that time. So it's just an oracy assessment for listening and speaking in both languages.
Yeah, I'm just asking because the more I learn about it, I mean, this is like a dual language program. That's like a TDP program. That's not easy to master both languages, right? Like that's a commitment. It's so if you're coming in scoring low, but it's so ubiquitous that that's the program offered in your school, your neighbors are in it, of course you're going to go into the program, right? You're not going to opt out of it for the most part. So but it's such a commitment, right? So I'm curious, this may be later, like what is the difference between like success in the Polish dual language program? And I know that it's not apples to apples, right? But like success in the Polish dual language program versus success in the Spanish dual language program, because it's only offered in one school, right? So yes, it's offered, that's the program in Polish, but you might have to bus across the district to it. Your parents might have to drop you off to it. So there's more buy-in for the program versus it's just offered at my school, so I'm going to default into it. Even if it's not the best choice, it's hard to it'd be impossible to understand that for most families. It'd be impossible for me to understand that for my family, what we're getting into at such a young age. So
can we pause for a second? Because I just want clarity to ask a question. So when you're comparing our dual language program to TDP, can you explain what you mean by that?
I just mean it's doesn't sound like an easy program to master both English and Spanish or English and Polish. And I don't know that family, and I appreciate everything you do. And I know you do a great job in trying to explain it, but I'm just saying if we're thinking of my point is, if we're thinking of contracting the program to make it stronger, will that even matter with like, is the Polish dual language program performing better because these families are making a commitment to not necessarily go to their home school, but still participate in the program? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I again wanted to maybe to draw the distinction is that we are obligated by law to provide bilingual education.
Correct.
And our model that we offer, the only model that we offer in District 59 is dual language.
Right.
ESL is not a delivery model for bilingual.
Right.
So it's a choice between dual language or not bilingual services.
Or a bilingual program, a transitional bilingual.
We do not
But
offer,
we could.
We do not offer a TBE program. Our model, the only model that our families have a choice for and are entitled to. I want to be just, I guess, maybe a little cautious about using the word choice. And I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of voices that have represented, and I'm seeing the nods, and I welcome you to the mic, because I think this point is a point that needs to be really clearly understood. It is different than a choice program. It is more similar to an IEP that we are obligated by law to provide based on the needs and assessments of our students. So I want to make sure that we separate the conversations. If the conversation is around how do we consolidate to enhance and improve our dual language program to give greater access and opportunity to all students who qualify for this program, that is one conversation. If we are questioning which program or even how do we encourage families to see this more as a choice, that is a very different conversation. And I feel that our staff and our families are going to need to know which conversation we're having. And just that clarity. We talked in June, whenever the dual language task force, and they asked for a commitment to supporting dual language, as opposed to TBE or other, those are the two basic models. And we talked a little bit about two-way, only one way. Those were the limited between there. But wholeheartedly and collectively, the task force came forward to recommend and ask for the board's support in dual language as our delivery model for bilingual services, which every child who comes into district at any grade level is entitled to receive. So that is an obligation that we have to provide. And I just want to be careful because I do not feel that we are in any position to market it as a choice program, which is what I think two-way became.
And I think that's kind of where
It got muddled.
I don't know if it's been fully, I know that it was brought up at one time, but there really is no two-way. Like there is, but you know what I mean? It's not the old 50-50 that they said it was, that you start at 80% Spanish, 20% English, and then you move forward. Am I correct? Like,
No, so I want to clarify. So the model of two-way is 80-20, just like a one-way. So it's 80% Spanish, 20% English. The demographic of the student is different.
Exactly.
So two-way is a choice because EL students who qualify with Spanish as a home language are entitled to the dual language services. Our non-EL students have the privilege of becoming part of our program to become bilingual as a choice.
And I think that's the mindset that we still have, the mindset of that there's two different groups. Like there's still that one way and two way, but we don't have, it's not separated like that anymore. We have an obligation to do the dual language. And if we have so many English speakers or non-native Spanish speakers, they can join as a choice. And those are the choice people.
That is where the only choice comes into
it's
to
not
play.
the program right now.
And I just feel like in order to represent the voices of our task force and our staff that have really committed to our dual language model, and to the many staff who joined our district because of the dual language model, it is not a choice program. Students who qualify for an IEP, those parents have a choice to deny it as well. But I would never call an IEP or special education a choice program. And it could get really muddled and miscommunicated. And I just want to be very clear tonight.
I'm not saying it's a choice program. I understand that we're legally obligated. If we don't do this, it's something else. But I think that goes to where are we offering it, along with like the WOLD alignment, and how do we model it so the students can be successful, and the whole building can be successful, rather than, two dual language classrooms, one monolingual classroom in this school, and then, 3 and 1 in another school, and that sort of thing. So that's I'm not calling it a choice program. But I think we need to think about, it's also not a choice program for dual language Polish. Like there's a legal obligation. We have to offer that to them. Right?
If yes, there's a legal obligation only because we created the dual language program, and because now that we have resources made available that can provide literacy instruction in the Polish language, we are obligated to provide it. Whereas in Ukrainian or Russian, because we don't have a curriculum available in those native languages, we can default to a TBE part-time model, which does not require us to give Ukrainian or Russian language instruction.
Yeah, and I appreciate, your explanation, Terry, and I don't mean to digress, but I guess I'll just go back to, I'm a newer board member, and I just feel I need to understand, what our legal obligations are, and the choice when I say choice, I mean the choice this district has made to choose dual language. My understanding is the state requires there to be a bilingual model if there's 20 or more in the school, and that transitional bilingual is basically the model. Dual language is an option. That's if you look on the ISB site right now, it says that TBE is the model. You can choose dual language as instead of that program. I know back in 2013 and before, we had both models here in the district. We had a choice program at Salt Creek, and I think it expanded to a few other schools, and we had transitional bilingual and others. I just feel before we move on to these big decisions we need to make, we all need to understand the history. And I don't know that everybody does. I mean, I've taken a lot of time to educate myself and to even review the past and what we've had. So this is the model we have. There's no doubt about it, but it doesn't mean that there aren't other options or combinations that we can consider when the goal is our students being successful, right?
Yeah, and I want to share then when we look in transitional bilingual, it is an option to provide. but the philosophy of transitional bilingual is a subtractive model. So what we start as, we during those critical years, as we just talked about, literacy critical years, kindergarten, first and second grade, we are only educating our students in their native language of Spanish. We have done that in the past. And then what happens is when we go to because there's an option of an early exit, which means by the end of third grade, or I'm sorry, by the start of third grade, you transition to full English. What we've seen is that our students have not had the opportunity to learn those literacy skills in English, and therefore national research has shown that transitional bilingual models are not as successful for any student when it comes to supporting them linguistically, because it's a subtractive model where they're not receiving those crucial years. We're only giving them native language support. We can also choose to do late exit, which means that they're learning Spanish all the way through fifth grade. And then in sixth grade is when they're finally fully exposed to English. So there are other options. I think the reason, and I was not here when the district decided to convert to dual language, but when we look at dual language research, the reason and the intention behind it is because it's giving the students the best opportunity to be able to learn both languages, because the goal of dual language, to put it on the record, the goal of dual language is to ensure that our students are English proficient as well as becoming bilingual. It's a benefit of the program. But our goal is to make sure that all of our students are English proficient. That's what we want out of the program. And when we look at program models, dual language has the most success in getting there. And so that's the piece that I want to kind of reiterate. And I think the piece when we talk about, is it a TDP program, I challenge that. Our students when you come in kindergarten, I don't think we can judge a child yet based on the linguistic levels that they're coming in with, without having them get the opportunity to learn and be successful and give them the conditions to be able to be successful. I think all students coming in kindergarten have the capability to be eventually in a TDP program. So all students therefore should have the opportunity to be in dual language if that's what they choose, if that's what they're entitled to, and that's the program model that they choose in place of ESL, so that they can have those opportunities to be successful in their career.
So I want to go back because, Michelle, I think you make an important point, is that we had a full discussion and went back in history and laid everything out. I think our teachers did the task force did an amazing job of laying it all out and what the process was and where we arrived. And what they asked for at that time was a commitment, a recommendation and a commitment to dual language as our continued model of choice in District 59. If the board has now changed, and we know there's new faces here, and we are now going to revisit that to reconsider whether or not the board is committed to that, then that is what we need to know so that we can go back to our teachers and our staff and have a different conversation. It will be a lot of work, as you saw with the Wold piece. It's months and months of work to lay out a long-range plan. And if we're not truly committed long-term, or if the commitment to dual language, I'm going to make a bold statement here, so I apologize, but if the dual language commitment is dependent on who is sitting in these seats every year to 2 years, we will not have the direction and the sustainability, and we will continue to feel that we are not meeting the needs of our students through our program. I'm seeing head nods, and I invite other voices, but that is why I think the commitment from wherever the board is the most critical component, because this can't be like every 6 months or every time there's a board election that we're revisiting this. It will create major instability in our system. And I feel that would be really misleading to our staff and to our families, most importantly. So that's the ask.
Yeah, I understand that, but we have many years of data to look at. We've had this program for a long time, and we've asked for cohort data. I think I see it here. So it's not like we're just going to flip-flop. We have lots of years of data that I'm seeing for the first time. And my commitment as a board member is to our students. It's to our students and their success. And I just feel, I want to hear the presentation, but I just feel that at some point we need to bring up the idea of what is in the best interests of our students. If bilingual is subtractive, let's work on it. If dual language can be improved, let's work on it, right? I'm not ruling anything out. I just feel we have this data, we have lots of years of it, and we need to react to that. We can't just say we're committed and not know the plan, right? And also make other huge changes to our buildings and all of that without having this serious discussion. So I understand that's not what this discussion was meant to be today, but I want to see it on the agenda at some point.
Yeah, and I truly appreciate you saying that. And what I want to echo then is, in order for us to get to that, because we're reflective, right? We're going to show the data and it's transparent and we're going to see where it's at and we're going to talk through that. What we want is that commitment so that we can show you that it can be better. And
Of
that's
course,
ultimately
of
what we
course.
want, because
You need that on your back so
Yes.
you can be motivated to do
Correct.
your job.
And I think
Right.
that's what we're asking as well. And and I will tell you that our teachers, myself, we bleed, we sweat, we have cry, because we want the best for our students. And what we want is to be able to create the conditions in order to show that our students, in whatever program model, they can be successful. And I know dual language can, and I know we have the history that shows that it may not have been, but then I challenge to say, have we had the conditions to allow us the opportunity to do so? And if we're at the point where we can say, you know what, let's truly have a conversation of what are those conditions, then that's where we need to lie on the table so that we can actually move forward as a district.
Right. And those conditions must be present. And
Mhm.
and just to speak to what TR was saying, it's a challenge for any student to learn things in two languages. You're just adding that much more onto them. When you add to that students who are several years behind, who may have some troubles at home, unstable family life, and we know that exists. That is why other districts choose to make a two-way dual language a choice, a limited choice model. There's reasons why they do that, because they understand that some of those conditions are external and can't be controlled no matter how strong our team is and how great the curriculum is. So these are things all these years, I haven't heard those things said out loud. And I'm just, just want to start hearing them, because I want our students to succeed, whether it's in dual language or maybe even a combination. I know that we can do both if that makes sense, or maybe for a while to do both. No hard and fast changes, of course. But I just would like to have that conversation. And I didn't mean to hijack this discussion. I mean, I've met with you all already. I just want the rest of the board to hear some of these thoughts, and maybe it'll be an idea for a future board meeting.
I think the big thing is we're doing so many different changes throughout the district. We don't want to, we know things take time, right? We have math curriculum. We're finally seeing progress. It takes time. Unfortunately, it's all coming all at the same time. And I think wanting to make sure that our students are really continuing, right? So if we're going to go dual language and we're going to decide on, however we're going to set up, what does that have to do with the Wolt study? What does that have to do with, and it's just kind of like that domino effect, that we just want to have that information and talk with, all stakeholders to make sure that we really know what's best.
Mhm. So some of the other assessments we have is Last Links. Last Links is given in second grade and in fifth grade currently right now in our district. The reason why the decision was made to do second grade and fifth grade is because this is a Spanish assessment, kind of like Access, or it's very much like Access, where it measures the 4 domains of language. So speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And we did it in second grade, at the end of second grade, in order for us to get an idea of where our students are now after they have 2 or 3 years in a dual language setting and where they're at towards their path towards bilingualism. Then we do it in fifth grade. Now that they have had all their years in dual language, to identify, have they met, and again, are we holding ourselves accountable? Is dual language producing and progressing to where we want it to be? Also, we use it as a data to support where do our students go then when they go to junior high. I can't remember who mentioned it, but this lends itself to what are those conversations we're having with our families who may not be on that path towards the biliteracy trajectory. And we do have those conversations, and we've educated our teachers to understand how to read and interpret this data. And sometimes we do have to have those tough conversations with our families, because we do have to be honest with our families and say, this is where the reality is. This is where we're at. if dual language is still a commitment and you want to stay in the program, we're going to still stay committed to you, but here's what we're going to have to do in order to make sure that we're meeting the needs of your child in both languages, because that's the goal of the program. Or we have the conversation of saying, we've been in the program for X amount of time. Here's what we can do. And some families may choose to opt out at that point. We don't dual language as a commitment, but we also don't hold parents hostage in the program. They have the choice to have educated decisions based on data to continue to make the best decision for their child. And then lastly, which is the best thing that we've had, is a formative and summative assessments, which we were able to get through our curricular resources. Our teachers are now equipped with more ways to formatively check our students, not just language, but also their skills in both languages, to ensure that we're meeting those paths towards accountability for our families and our students.
Legally, when you have those meetings that are hard, are you legally allowed to recommend? Okay, that's what.
Yeah, so we still cannot legally dissuade a family or make give them a recommendation. We present all options and say and let families make a decision. We share the data. We allow them to understand, this is option A. Your child can stay in the program. If they stay in the program, here's what we're going to have to do in order to support your child. And we have to develop a plan prior to having that meeting, right? Because we're not going to go in and say, oh, well, let's think of a plan now. We want to make sure the parents are educated at that moment in time.
And when you say plan, you mean like interventions and things like that?
Yeah. So,
right.
So what are we going to do in the school to be able to provide them interventions, supports, within the classroom, differentiated pieces, those types of ideas. And then we say, if you choose not to do dual language, here's what we can do to support the English, because that would be the model you would be going into. And here are the supports you still may need in that program. And that's where families, we don't ever ask them, make a choice like right then and there. If they're ready to, they can. But think it through, ask more questions. I always ask them to reach out to me if they want to discuss it further. And then that's where we continue to have those conversations. It is very hard. And I'll tell you, a lot of families always ask, what is your professional opinion? What is your personal opinion? And I have to leave that out. And I will tell you that I have a lot of personal and professional opinions, because I do want the best for our children, but I don't ever want it to come back. You said, this is the model I should have gone in, and it wasn't successful, because it's not, I need them to be able to make that decision for their child.
Well, it's hard too, because they're not only leaving the program, they're leaving their friends who are in the program, like the class that maybe they've been with them for 3 years, right? So it's more than just the educational piece.
Yeah, and part of that, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because part of that plan is that SEL component. How do we transition? When is the right time to transition? It's not just tomorrow, let's just change you. It's how do we create a plan, and how do we maybe integrate, if the option is to leave dual language, is how do we integrate you into the setting so that you can start to, if it's within the same school, most times it is, to start to make some of those relationships, to get to know the teachers before we just up and root you.
So can I ask a quick question? So to qualify for interventions, and I'm looking at you because I don't know if this is better for you to answer, is it two separate benchmarks, like for the dual language program or versus like the monolingual program, or? Sorry.
I was just, I can start and you can. So the criteria we look at is consistent universally across all of our students. But what we look at is we look at then in both languages, because we have the opportunity to look at iReady in both English and Spanish. Is we want to know, is this a deficit in one language or is it a deficit in both languages? And then if it's in one language, then we start to have the conversation of, well, what is that path and where is the student and where are they at in their educational career in order to make those decisions? If it is in both languages, and we start to look at, okay, so where do they fall in the spectrum of linguistic capability? Meaning, if it is a student who's still at a 1.9 language acquisition, the question is, are they going to be able to access the intervention if they don't have the language to be able to access it? And whoever's delivering that language, if it is in English, are they going to be successful in being able to do that? Or do they need more time to be able to acquire the language so that they can eventually access the intervention that they would need? So we look at the student more holistically, but it starts at that same threshold.
Yes.
Correct.
Hypothetically, this is a hypothetical. If you had a second model in addition to dual language, would you be legally allowed to recommend that second model to a kid who is just not successful in dual language? They're not getting it.
No, so legally, I still can't recommend anything.
It's another model of bilingual you cannot recommend. I recommend this would be a better model for you.
No.
Okay.
No, because then I'm putting my personal bias to it.
But you can describe the differences
Absolutely,
between the
yes.
two.
Educating and describing, educating our families is different than recommending it. So yes, I can educate our families so that they can make the best decision. I cannot recommend a model to a family.
Since we're here, could you maybe explain the path that administration would take when you identify there's a student and they are from all angles just not being successful in this program? What would happen next?
Yeah, so it starts at all of our buildings have their synergy teams and they have the MTSS teams. So they're consistently looking at students and talking data and having those pieces. So it always starts from the teacher. You know, the teacher will bring this student up to the problem solving team within the school, who is an administrator as part of that process. And I know we have administrators in the audience if they would like to join in as well. So they're brought up to that problem team solution or problem solving team opportunity right then and there. And that's where they start to look at data. They start to look at all the different components of where the student is. They start to ask some questions about what are some of those, what is the history of that student? Do they have educational gaps? Have been consistent in our district since the beginning of time? What is their language level of acquisition? So a lot of variety of factors. And then I think from there, they start to make identifications and plans to, are we monitoring the student? Are we, there's always a plan. So it's either, are we monitoring the student, but leaving them in the setting without interventions and giving them opportunities with more language scaffolds? Are we bringing in more coaching support in order to provide that student? Are we looking at potentially having some of the resources that we have available to families they can utilize, or students, they can utilize them not as an intervention, but more as a support, like if it's linguistic needs. We have a lot of students, for example, at the junior high level, right? We have newcomers that come in and they don't have the literacy skills in English to be able to read yet. So we don't say that it's an intervention, but we do give them the support for language, and they get to use the same resource that an interventionist would use, but for the purpose of giving them the opportunities to get to that level versus saying that it's a deficit. So does that make sense? So we don't ever say language is a deficit. It's an opportunity that they haven't had yet to grow, but we still don't deny students those opportunities to receive those services, but for a different purpose.
And it is important for us to note that that process is the same for every child in our district, regardless of programming. So that is the exact same route that any administrator would take when any child is struggling. What's different is the consideration of that linguistic profile and what is needed in the type of support and intervention that is then provided.
When I understand that that's ongoing, right, for every kid, when would you get serious maybe about having a family conversation?
So that's why we put lost links in place, because after that second grade going into third grade, it's one of the, I think professionally and research has shown that third grade is really that crucial year. We start looking at standardized testing. We start looking at students, academic path. We start looking at that should start the trajectory of all students, regardless of program model. They should start breaking that mold and moving forward in their linguistic path. So I think that's end of second grade before we get to third grade is a crucial time that we have those conversations, which is why we have lost links at that point in time to have another data point to talk. I think also fifth grade is another great opportunity to have those conversations. It's ongoing each grade levels, but I think if you were asking me from a language standpoint, I think that's second into third and then fifth into junior high, and really having those critical conversations with our families and making some decisions on what is their educational path moving forward. So our goals for 24-25 is to continue to do ongoing support for year two for the authentic in Spanish dual language literacy. We want to make sure, just like with math, we saw the huge benefits of how when we have a solid implementation plan, we're able to do that. So Alyssa Coker, the language literacy coaches, along with our MLP facilitators and myself, being able to support this year two implementation of literacy is going to be a great is going to serve as a great impact to our students and being able to see the results that we want to see. As I mentioned, we did that refresher, that reboot, that revitalization with Dr. Jose Medina. We wanted an outside expert. He's nationally renowned, has spoken in a variety of locations regarding, dual language programming and the research that he has done in regards to how to make sure that we are being held accountable to these standards and having those tough conversations and looking at data and saying, if we're not doing it, what do we need to do better? Our next step, and actually we're starting tomorrow, is building our dual language assessment trajectory. So it's really identifying what we're talking through is, when do we start to identify when is it necessary to have those critical conversations, and each year looking at where our students are progressing within that language level of progression, and when do we start having those conversations. So building that trajectory towards bilingualism and have a better understanding that this is where we expect a student to be in kindergarten, and this is where we expect students to be in 5th grade, and all throughout that continuum of where is it that they're falling in, so that we always are having those critical conversations. Obviously, we want to continue to provide updates to the Board of Education on our structure possibilities, again, talking through that commitment. And then, as I mentioned, that big goal of having those community and family engagements. And one of the things that I want to start this year is director talks. I think it's super important to have opportunities besides BPAC, which is more of an event, having opportunities for me to be intimate with our families and allow them to share what is working, what is not working, what do they wish to see, what do they wish to grow, really understand that. So we're looking at ways to partner with the buildings and, coming out to their PTO events, either doing it before or doing it after, and capturing it, not during their PTO event, because we don't want to take away from that, but giving opportunities so that families have that opportunity to just share their voices, which I think is something that we haven't given a lot of opportunity to give our families to do.
Don't pause for too long. Or any questions?
Well, next one is questions. Next one is questions, and yeah.
Okay, so I think, this is me talking. And
then we have the data. If you
want to look at the data first? Or is that next?
So we had a board question regarding cohort data. So we regularly look at our access data. We present out on it annually. We use that to drive and inform along with all our other data points. So this piece was presented last.
Haven't presented this yet.
This one, but we present this annually as part of the
school report card.
Fall, right? As part of the
Correct.
school report card piece, because that's when we get the statewide averages.
Exactly.
But what we were specifically asked for was to look at access exit rates by cohort. So students who started with us in either kindergarten or 1st grade and have continued with us in our programs, how have they exited access by 5th grade? And so that's the data that we have pulled together. Thank you. I want to give Corey a shout out, because this
Corey
was,
King, our assessment
this was like
coordinator.
10, 12 hours of work to just get it into this format and really make sure that we put it in a way that considers apples to apples. So
Yeah, so based on that request, the nice piece of the timing, we could really look at our current junior high students, or students who at least stayed through 5th grade and then have left the last few years. The premise was they were with us in kindergarten or 1st grade. So in the end, this is about 792 students who started in District 59 in kindergarten or 1st grade, were qualified as EL students, and stayed in the program through 5th grade. There were another about 400 kids who left prior to that, or kids who left and then came back, but we excluded them so we could be consistent. This first group, there we go, is the overall for each year. So that 280, that stands for the number of kids. So in 2021-22, they're currently 8th graders. They were in kindergarten or 1st grade. The exit rate was 35.7.
So exit rate means they tested where they would not
They
be in
met the
program?
4.8 standard to now be exited from English learning. So then status, thank you. Then the next group, the green group, at 258, that's current 7th graders, 2022-23, they're K1. And then we're at 254. That's 48.4% of our kids currently in 6th grade. So last year they were in 5th grade. Then you can see how it flows across different groups we have. We have ESL. We have one way. I used one way and two way. Next time it'll be blended. We have two-way. We combine those. We look at Polish and we look at denied services. So you can see how that flows across each group. We did on the ESL side disaggregate and pull out. We do have a number of schools and kids who are Spanish native language kids who deny services and then are in an ESL program, so we can see their exit rate. Please, Joshua.
So to clarify, they don't deny services. They're opting into a different model of receiving services. So they're receiving ESL services. So they're choosing not to take the bilingual service model.
The difference between that and denied services is if the parents have denied service, they are not even receiving ESL intervention.
Correct. They receive no language support whatsoever.
But are required to take the access test.
And does the denied services, the last piece of the graph, does that include all languages or everything but Spanish?
Every language that's out there.
And that's like those numbers on there. That's the actual number of students. So it's a very low sample.
Almost excluded them because it's really not still statistically valid to look at a group size of 10 to 18. So Joe, I was thinking about you, but we said, hey, we're going to throw it up there, but we're going to make the note that, yeah, that looks that way, but it is so statistically invalid for comparison's sake. So that is way pushed over to the right. And then we did do the added step for the ESL versus ESL Spanish, because it is really significant to understand the number of students that receive ESL services by default because they speak languages other than Polish or Spanish, but still are entitled to ESL services.
So if you go back to the state data, that is.
So basically this is our exit rate scores for all kids K to 8 on an annual basis.
Regardless of what program they opt into out of.
ESL, denied services, Polish, Spanish, all programs. And then that's true also for the state. So yes, our projected, it has not, there we go. It's not yet official, but we're looking at an 8.7, which is our highest rate since 2017-18. You see this dip just to highlight that was a COVID year where this test occurs in January, February. We were about 60% of our kids were in school and tested. So some of that's impacted on who actually tested and went through that process.
Yeah.
So
So just like to try to wrap it up. I have no doubt that whatever program we choose, which to me would still be the dual language program because we put in so much work into it. And I think those suggestions that you're talking about making in terms of how can it be more successful, I think a lot of that has to do with, I feel like it's spread, that's spread thin across the district because it's in every school, right? So how can we come up with a way to make it more concentrated so we can pool resources and you can have those interventionists not spread across the whole district, but at a couple schools, but still have the ability to accommodate everybody that we're legally required to do, right? So I think that's where it goes into the WOLD piece, like how can we do that? And what other suggestions, what other improvements are you making? And can we see when we do these assessments, I would love to see our progress continue to go up to know that we're on the right course and we're doing the right thing. Because if we went to TBE, we'd be essentially going backwards. So anybody else have?
I don't necessarily agree that we'd be going backwards. I think we would need to look more into it. I just want us to discuss all of our options.
On this, can you explain the difference between the grades, the 6th, 7th, and 8th? What's that trend mean?
So we'll focus on the 8th grade, the blue. So these students were in kindergarten or 1st grade in 2000. Actually, if I could just jump ahead one. Yeah. So that group, these are our this 8th grade group. They were in kindergarten, 1st grade in 2016-17, 2017-18. Then they matriculated through the district. And then we looked at this 5th grade piece so that we would see where were they at in 5th grade. So that's the focus of this data. What happened over that 5 to 6 years period of time in language acquisition? Remember, access is just language acquisition. English language
yes.
acquisition. Thank you very much. So from that, 35.7% of our EL kids for that 5 to 6 years met the standard for access and exited
By fifth grade.
by 5th grade
Okay, so they're 8th graders now, but this is the assessment based on when 5th grade was.
when they were in 5th grade.
Okay, yeah. So this upward trend. So now the 7th graders by 5th grade, a higher percentage of them had
Correct.
access. So that suggested as the program moved forward in years, we had higher exit rates by 5th grade year.
Yes, to the point,
Successive years.
this group that's now last year's 5th graders, we 48.4%, almost half of the kids exited within that. And really that's the state defined window that you have. They don't count kindergarten, but you have 5 years to exit. That's the target they have as the state for all languages.
And so just to clarify, kindergarten is not counted, so it's a 0 year. So technically students have until the end of 6th grade. But we, as when we talked about what is our goal, we'd like to do it before 5th grade, because we know that once they get to 6th grade, they go into a different band of access testing. They take the 6-8 cluster, which makes it that much more difficult for students to be able to meet the exit criteria, which is why we work very hard, and we want to work very hard to try to make that happen by the time they leave 5th grade.
Do you have any insight about why this drop has happened for ESL native language Spanish between the previous year and this year? 2 years ago and the previous
Yeah, I think
year.
you're pointing to this
Yes.
this group. Honestly, we finalized this data this afternoon, so to say we had a chance to analyze.
I think we have a comment and response, Tom. So I'll save you from the mic.
Yeah, I think that's because ESL especially for our Spanish speakers, is a subtractive model where dual language is additive.
But I guess I don't understand why the sudden drop.
Again, because it's a subtractive model. So
Wasn't it also a subtractive model those 2 years though?
Which
the 2 years prior? You know what I'm saying? So like you've got 26, 25, 9.
Oh, you're talking about that very last year?
Yeah.
42, 21.
Because it was still a subtractive model in
Yeah, for sure.
2021 or whatever. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
No, I do not.
Yeah.
I understand you have not had time to analyze.
I
the
think
data.
it would be important to overlay,
It's also small
if we could dig deeper into what our newcomer status was, overlaid with ESL and the language, because I think that has a marked impact too in terms of that. Now, these are students who have been with us
They have been with us, so they're not newcomers.
since that time. So, I mean, that is a marked drop that we would
I
have
think
to look
a piece to that, we'd want to look at the school potentially.
you know what too is that look at the numbers,
small number,
not
too.
the percentage,
That-
right? That could be also, we went from 21 to 23. It might have just been a bigger pool of people in that
So that
cohort.
that number in the bar is the number who exited or the total assessed? The cohort size or
That
The number
is
who
the
exited.
total assessed.
Oh,
Total assessed,
23.
so-
So 9.5% out of 23. Tom.
Yeah, so it's 2 kids.
2 kids. Okay.
Yes. Yes. So you see 1 or 2 kids can swing that data pretty quickly.
So can I make a suggestion? Can we look at this data and email questions as we need
So
to?
we have a full data benchmarking presentation scheduled for October where we can continue to add, because we'll have updated information in terms of that. I think, and what we started down, what I think maybe you were going, TR, I think 4 of you were here for the dual language task force presentation, where we went, I think it was at least 2 hours of conversation and in-depth sharing of information around that. And then that's when the ask for the support around that was for dual language. So I would like to leave tonight knowing, are we being charged to gather more data and have more conversations with our current board to determine whether or not we are going to continue with dual language as our model? Or are we in a place where, yeah, we want to keep asking these questions so that we can support and improving the program, but we as a board are committed to moving forward? I just think I need to know, for the sake of our dual language task force and our teachers, many who I think are listening or will be tuning into this presentation. I would like clarity on where we are with that.
I am still, and I want to point out, like, we can always reserve the right to change our minds, like, as we uncover more information. So, which I think a lot of us have been doing, but I don't necessarily see the benefit of going to a different model from dual language. So I still support it, but I do think it needs the continued work that you're doing. And like, the curriculum didn't exist before, right? So how long does so if we can just get more, and maybe those who are still questioning it, you can ask for the information that you might need that may convince you one way or another. But I'm still in support of it. I'm not in support of it, which is, I think, where we left last meeting, being ubiquitous at all these different schools. I think it needs to be combined with the WOLD study and any improvements that we make, so that it can be, so that every school does have, not every school is going to have dual language, but every student will have the same experience where they're not, you can't account for everything. If there's just a grade with only 10 kids in a certain area, that's going to be a singleton no matter what you do. But to the best of our ability to eliminate these singletons and have the resources to support this program to be successful, more concentrated, because right now it's just kind of all over the place, and it's better than it had been. So I don't even know if taking out of a couple schools has led to some of these improvements, but I think it's something that I would still be in favor of.
Yeah, I would say similar. The dual language model, we went through all of this, is the superior model under all the research. And I think making sure that we as a district provide the resources to make that model work and match up with what we know is, like the ideal, right? Obviously it wasn't the ideal previously, but there's been a lot of progress towards that improved model, or improvement towards the ideal model. And I would put it in the same boat as if I looked at our math scores were not necessarily very good. We put a lot of work into improving the curriculum, doing a lot of professional development. We didn't abandon teaching math. So when I think of the dual language program, I think of that under the same idea. We know that for our students who need those services, it's the superior model, and putting the proper resources behind that model will serve those students. There's a lot of challenges in making that work, but I think we need to put the best interests of those students first.
As I said, if there are any extra questions, but I think we could kind of move on. I think, I don't know, do you want us to vote on if we want to, or is that,
No,
we
this is
can't
just
vote. It's
this is just a
it's just
consensus taking to
right.
see where we are, so I can provide direction for our
Okay.
dual language department or our multilingual department and our dual language task force. So I just appreciate knowing kind of what we're preparing for.
Follow-up question. Is the dual language task force meeting again? Do they have something on the books, or is that committee
We've
disbanded?
been waiting for this to reconvene, but yes, that it is an ongoing task force so we were left with what you had, I think both of you had described. We are supporting dual language, but we need to articulate the structures and find a method to consolidate in order to ensure that the program structure was on par with our monolingual counterparts, and that we were able to really implement with fidelity. That's what we left June with. And I want to, based on some questions, and obviously, things change, and I respect that. So I want to make sure that I'm providing the leadership to our task force, and that is still the charge.
I'm torn. I want to be clear to the dual language teachers. We support you. We support you, and we know how difficult your job is on a daily basis. Okay. I just want to put that out there. You work incredibly hard. I cannot, I read that dual language audit. I cannot even fathom what you are doing in the classroom every day. I am very encouraged that these numbers are trending upwards, but they still scare me. This is 46% of our kids, and we want to make the most right decision possible. I will acquiesce to the majority of the board. I really think that this is something that we need to see frequent updates on and monitor progress on. And I would love to see those numbers continue to trend upwards. My gut fear is that I have been in a classroom and I know that this is going to be too difficult for some kids. And I worry that we are not legally allowed to recommend something else if a kid is drowning.
So maybe, I don't know if this would help others, but is there a district or data or something out there that shows what basically the only other, what are the other alternatives, a TBE program? So is there data to compare to what we're seeing here, or because to put that into place, I mean, that's not going to happen next year. Like that's going to be a whole new rework. And do we take steps backwards to take steps forwards eventually? So I don't know if that would help.
Are you done, Sarah, or do you? Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, just, and I'm sorry, I've been doing so much of the talking, but as a new board member, and this is what's on fire for me, is this issue, especially since we're being asked to possibly make a decision that revolves around this program. I just want us to gather all of the information, understand all of the options before we continue, because I know we all want our kids to be successful. We want, teachers to be able to chime in on what's working, what's not working. As Sarah said, this is a challenging program. A dual language program of any kind is challenging. That's why in other districts, it's like a competitive choice program, right? And it's very tightly monitored to be sure that students are not making success, are not having success. They do exit the program. So I want us to just understand all of this and not just be like, biliteracy is great. Of course it's great. The rest of the world is doing it very well. I had an exchange student stay with me last fall that spoke perfect English, described a very different model and how they learned it. And I don't want to go into that. I don't know it, but I'm just looking at the next slide, which we didn't talk about. And I'm seeing our one-way Spanish. And I think the description is exited by end of 5th grade, and it combines 6th through 8th graders. 75.5% did not exit the program. That's the next, the next slide. The one-way Spanish, 75.5% not exited. I'm looking at that number. And, that number scares me too. And I know we're only going to get better with these improvements that we make, but I just want us to understand our options. I do know that we had a combined model before. We had some dual language and we had some bilingual. We have history. I don't know exactly how successful that was. But and if we are describing another program as subtractive, let's make it better. Let's make it better. I'm not convinced that we have to make it all Spanish for the first 3 years. I just want us to keep our options open. I'd love for it to be dual language. I want our students to be biliterate, but I feel like I don't think it's fair for us to take a vote right now. I mean, we're just trying, we're actually we're kind of hijacking this meeting because we're saying we need more information. So that's
Yeah, I don't think so. If I'm hearing everybody, there's not enough information to change course at the moment.
Right. There's not.
And changing course is would be no small thing, obviously. So what information would we like to see? So that, can we do like a committee of the whole next time and see more information ahead of the next meeting, or what does everybody want to see, or maybe think about it? And then,
yeah, I think I would really love I get that we're spending a lot of time on this, but that's how important it is. And if we walk away from this room and I have individuals navigating the conversation in isolation, I'm not sure we're going to get closer to where we need to be. So we can absolutely do, I mean, we already have a committee of the whole in October, as well as our benchmarking piece. So we are all for it. To be quite frank, after hearing tonight, I'm sure I'm going to hear from a lot of teachers tomorrow. Joshua, I'm sure you probably have emails right now. I think our teachers, and to be quite fair, this was their recommendation. They worked through this process and they know how hard their jobs are. They are committed because they believe, and we support them, we meaning administration, in knowing that students who are in our greatest need our dual language teachers. That's the resounding message and sentiment that I have heard since day one walking in this district. What they need and what would make them feel good, better than, thoughts and prayers, is I clearly outlined every condition that they need to be successful. They want partner teachers. They wanted authentic curriculum done, in progress. They wanted meaningful and valid criteria to demonstrate their success with our students. We have not yet delivered on that. We are working on that in progress. They want us to be compliant with our 90% legal requirement for our class sizes. They want to ensure that they have equitable resources to their monolingual counterparts. All of the things that they clearly outlined. And that was what we said. We are going to build recommendations to guide us towards that, but we cannot do it without the board. If we are back to now look at baseline data in a program that has not been given the supports that it needs to be successful, I do not believe that we can have within the next 3 to 5 years a decision to deviate, because it would be unfair. We're judging a program that has not been given. And even if we went back and looked historically, which I appreciate the historical perspective, but our students in front of us today are not the students. Our makeup is not the same. And we spend a good amount of time looking at our historical data and the changing demographics of our communities so that we can meet the needs of the kids who are in front of us today moving forward. So I think what might be best is for our teachers to speak on their own behalf. The experts who have way more experience than I myself. I mean, we have 4 people, firsthand bilingual learners and advocates, to speak to this. And I'm not sure if we can even challenge the expertise that's sitting in front of us in this room. I speak on behalf, I do not speak for. And we are charged with receiving the information, asking critical questions, making sure we have the finances, the facilities, and all of that to meet the needs. That is the purview of the board. If we turn around and say that we are now questioning the board's commitment to dual language as the model, then we need to bring our teachers in front of us and have that conversation. That's my ethical leadership compass, and I hope that is appreciated and respected at this table.
It is. I want to be clear. I want to send more than my thoughts and prayers to the teachers. I guess what I need is to continue seeing it trending upward. That's what I need.
Okay, so we have to give it time, right? Like to
Either
get
that
there.
or get more frequent data regarding it going. I just want to see it's trending upwards, and that will give me, because it's going to require a leap of faith to consolidate. I think that is what is going to give me the confidence to take the leap of faith.
Yeah, I agree. But seeing your passion, truly, like I came in here very torn. I can see that you believe in this program. And we all want what's best for these kids, and no thoughts and prayers, but I hope that this is the best way to do it, because I see that you want this for them. I think that, we need to try to maybe figure out a way to consolidate a little bit and work with Wold and see how we can get these kids together, get the staff together so that they can work together and we're not so so spread out. There's just no way right now that this is working this way. It's not working.
So can I ask, even if we did, not saying this is the path I want to take, but if we did go to like a different model, I think it would still be in the best interest to whatever that model is. If you do a TB model, does that have to be in every school? I know there's different dynamics where they exit in third grade, so they all become a blended class again.
No, so it doesn't have to be at every school.
Okay.
But again, every family would have the entitlement to being able to go to that.
Okay.
So consolidation may be necessary in that program as well, right? That's not the piece that I'm is most concerned about. I'm concerned about the success of our students and getting them to English proficiency. Biliteracy is a noble goal, and we want that. But if it's just going to be that difficult, especially if we consider external factors out of our control, I just want us to understand that because we are here for students, for the teachers, for the community. And I would hate to have a bunch of, I respect all of the teachers, but to just have you up here crying because you want this program. I mean, I get your passion, but we have to, everyone has to look at all of these factors. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so I think we're at a place where there's, yes, continued, if I'm reading the room right, we're not taking a vote, but I think the sentiment, and Lucas isn't here, but I think, yeah, he supports the dual language program. I don't want to speak for him, so I could be wrong, but so I think we're still, yes, on the path to figure this out and see continuous improvement. And if it's going to be successful, I would rather have nobody in this position than you and the teachers and the staff that we have, because once we give you the proper resources, we kind of see what we're able to do in terms of like the curriculum that we have been rolling out and some of the changes that we have been making. So I think it's only fair to give you that opportunity. I think we just need to be looking at this more, almost like we're looking at the information that Tom shares with us all the time.
And I do want to say that 3 times a year, we look at all of our assessments. And we look across all of our demographics and our programs. So Tom includes, we have access. We look at our programs across, we report out on last links. All of that 3 times a year as available is reported to the board on a regular basis since I think my first year. So I don't think there's any lack of sharing it out. I think maybe it's we haven't guided the conversation specifically around it and pulling out and taking the time to look at that data, which it's a lot and it takes a lot of time. But the data is there and we have a lot of historical pieces and we look at it nearly every day and we report out at least 3 times a year, and maybe moving it into a committee of the whole format would allow for more conversation. And we can definitely make those changes.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody?
Thanks. I know these are hard conversations to have. Thank you for engaging with all of us. We appreciate it.
All right. 10:15 summer school, summer programming. Thank you for sticking around.
Sorry, guys and ladies.
All right, we are here to do a very quick, very brief at 10:15 p.m. Discussion of our summer programming. And I will just start off by handing it to, I'll introduce. So again, I'm Nicole Robinson, oversaw the summer programming this year. And I have Jill Doles, who's our assistant principal at Brentwood, Phil Deppa here, who is assistant principal at Holmes, and Nick Milano, who's assistant principal at Friendship, all of whom were summer school principals. And they're going to take it off. Here we go.
Great. So our summer school session dates, we had 2 types of summer programs that we were running. One was Summer Leap. The other was the Extended School Year, or ESY program. Summer Leap was held at Devonshire and Salt Creek. It was about 4 weeks. Our students came Monday through Thursday from 8 to 12 p.m. We did not have school on June 19th. Extended School Year was an actual extra week. They went from June 10th through July 10th, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 12, also with June 19th off and July 4th. Our program offerings for Summer Leap, most of our students were identified through the MTSS process. We had pre-K through 7th grade literacy and math. There were classes that were offered for monolingual English and DL Spanish. We also had some newcomer classrooms. Our Summer Leap programs also had the opportunity to provide enrichment courses for our Spanish Dual Language Academy, our double accelerated math, which was an invite only for rising 6th grade students. We had some instrumental music camp like band and orchestra that lasted about 3 weeks. There were also a number of enrichment courses that were offered for students who were rising 6th graders through 8th grade. And then there was volleyball, wrestling, sport camps that were at Salt Creek. Our extended school year, our students were recommended through data that was collected regarding their IEPs. Services were provided that were tied to students' IEPs, and they saw students that were pre-K through 7th grade. Some of the curricular resources that were offered to our students for Summer Leap, we had IM Math. We also had the opportunity to offer some science and social science curricular resources to our students. So they got to preview what they would be learning about this fall. So it was built-in opportunity for success for them to have a connection to the curriculum that they would be exposed to in the fall. Our enrichment courses, again, we had that double accelerated math class that we just talked about, Spanish dual language, instrumental camp. All of the enrichment courses, the curriculum was developed by the teachers who taught those classes. And then for extended school year, they used iReady, FastBridge, News to You, curricula, and some strategy selection guides that were tied to students' IEP goals.
All right, for Summer Leap, the enrollment process, students were identified as being priority students and were given the opportunity to register before the rest of the district. Those priority students were students who are receiving, who were in the spring receiving tier 2 or 3 interventions. And there was expected skill regression if students did not continue along a learning path in the summer and or did not meet their academic goals. So schools were able to identify those students based on the percentage of students in need. So it wasn't like a blanket, every school gets 60 invites. We did the percentages of how many students were receiving intervention and then made it proportional across the schools. And so we had invited, I say here 945 students because we gave schools, a certain number to work with, but I know that they went over that cap. So I'm sure it was a little bit more than 945 that were invited. The total number who registered was 905, which was great. We were super excited. But then as expected, a fewer number actually ended up attending, which was 748. But that's still a great number and an increase over last year. In enrichment, we had, as Ms. Dole's already talked about, the different kinds of pieces of enrichment, and you can see there the range from 26 to 82 kids. Enrichment courses were 3 weeks in length, and so they ended on June 28th, and that's for a variety of factors. I know our instrumental music camp teachers are only available to work 3 weeks. Also, our partnership with Roosevelt University for the Spanish dual language is only a 3-week course for them, and so we just kept it all as the enrichment courses were 3 weeks long.
So here we have our summer school statistics from this previous summer, and this is off of the first day of summer school. So I won't read every number up there, but student totals, 748. Of those 748, 240 were those junior high enrichment, the IMC, the sport camps as well. 42 teachers between LEAP, 15 of the junior high enrichment courses, 17 for ESY. This is a comparison from Summer Leap two summers ago, 2023, and then this past summer. You could see that the first day of summer school, 2023, there was 633 students on that first day. This previous summer, we had 748. If you do look, we did have more withdrawals. We did offer, from my understanding, more junior high enrichment opportunities. So there was for instance, I was just looking right before this, 20 wrestling students that confirmed, and then after 3 days they didn't show up. So just to give you an example, that the more offerings, potential more withdrawals.
Can I ask, is withdrawals mean they just didn't come at all? It wasn't that they left
It's
early?
various reasons. So we do keep attendance every single day. So after that second day that they were absent, we were making attendance calls, and sometimes they were like, yeah, we registered, now we're not doing it anymore. Sometimes you get, yeah, we're going to come tomorrow, they never show up, or we totally forgot that we enrolled, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's summer, right? So it's like
Vacations
anything can
too.
happen.
So different priorities for everybody, but those that did attend all the way through, or for majority of the LEAP program, this is an image that of a template of our progress report. So teachers provided students with individualized feedback. Again, this is whether they were pre-K, first grade, junior high enrichment. It was catered to the students. So families got this the last day. This was also mailed to the home schools as well. And all the fun stuff. So the special events during LEAP, we did go through safety drills. I wouldn't say fun. I mean, safety is very important, obviously. So we did our bus evacuation, secure and teach lockdown and evacuation drills with all students. A special thank you to Mount Prospect Library for visiting Devonshire. We did have a Spirit Week superhero Princess Day. You can kind of see here our superhero images. Kids had a lot of fun with that. Rock Your School Day, Sports Day. We had our IMC concert. So that top right image that you see, it was a packed house at Salt Creek. I'm personally going to give a shout out to Christy D'Amico for facilitating and promoting that event. Families were very happy, and it was great that students were able to perform in such a large group. We had enrichment class presentations, whether that was junior high to junior high, or some even representing the lower levels as well. And then for field day, our last day, I'm going to give a shout out. I know I was at Salt Creek. Elk Grove Park District didn't donate. They let us borrow a lot of carnival and lawn games. And another thank you, and although they couldn't make it to the Elk Grove Fire Department, they were planning to come hose the kids down at 11:30. I got a call that they were tending to an actual emergency, which then I had like 300 kids looking at me like, Mr. Deppa, when are they coming? And I had to break 300 hearts. And you would think that they weren't having fun for the last 2 hours, and they were. So it was still a good time at both schools. And so I'm going to pass it over.
So ESY operates slightly differently. ESY is extended school year. It's an extension of the school year as determined by the IEP team. We're focused on two main areas and criteria for eligibility for students to be recommended for ESY: expected skill regression over the summer, or students who didn't meet their IEP academic or related service goals during the school year. So this process started back in March. Once I sent these cheat sheets, quote unquote, to go ahead and advance this slide. These sheets were sent to all the case managers and LBS teachers at all the schools servicing students for ESY, where they would fill in goal area, provider, and then a number of minutes. So that way we could start collecting and compiling information for the school year. So advance the slide, please. We've had, that'll work too. So we had multiple programs all attending ESY. We have a very wide range within special education. We had early childhood classrooms, our ELS, our early life education, life skills, our SIP, which is cross-categorical instructional program. And then even within our special ed, we had instructional, which is like a self-contained, and then co-taught. So we did service a wide range of student needs all throughout our district. Primarily focused in two areas: academics, which is reading and math primarily, although we did supplement through science and social studies to accomplish those goals. And that was primarily teacher constructed based on the IEP goals, which they were provided in March and April. So they were starting to build those. So it was all individualized based on the class that they had for the summer. In addition to that, related service providers would push in and co-teach lessons or pull students out and provide either functional or speech or counseling or occupational or physical therapy goals as well. So some of our statistics, we're looking at 116 students, and of those students, 91% maintain progress toward at least one of their IEP goals with us at ESY. So when we look back at those initial criteria, expected skill regression or not meeting goals during the regular school year, we would say that ESY was a success this year.
So the last day of LEAP and the last day of ESY, we did send a staff and parent feedback survey. So we included just a couple here for the staff. I really enjoyed this format of 7:30 to 12 or 8 to 12:30. Enrichment courses were a big success. And then when looking at parent feedback, my son really enjoyed it. He was happy. Plus he learned. I am happy. My son enjoyed summer LEAP. Teachers are nice, very convenient location. The program enriched my child's knowledge. My daughter really enjoyed the summer volleyball camp. Which leads us to our board questions and discussion.
All right. So my child attended the summer LEAP program. She was a third, going to be fourth grader. She is tier 3 MTSS. She struggles a lot. I would have loved to have more feedback from the teacher. I didn't hear from the teacher once, and we couldn't make it to the last day of school, so I never got that paper. But I will ask my school if they have it, because I'm sure they do. I think she had fun, but like, I don't know what she did every day. You know, well, what'd you do today? Oh, I had recess and I saw my friends and, you know, whatever. But like, I don't know what she did, what she learned. I don't know that there was a huge, like she struggles a lot. Like, I don't know that there was like a huge gap closure for her at all. But I mean, she had a good time, you know.
So yeah, I will address that. We do know that there are opportunities to improve communication for our teachers. It's difficult when our teachers are getting students who are not like in Sky, where they can't see exactly who, you know, they have access. They do have access, but it's not easy access to all of the emails. We will improve that for next year and give them that information so that they have more easy access to communicate. The other thing is, you're right. Like as far as, you know, like closing gaps, you know, it's 14 half days of school. And so our biggest goal is to get them engaged and get them excited and have them building relationships. And of course, do some learning along the way. But you're right. It's, you know, are we going to solve all the world's problems? I say we're not going to solve all the world's problems in 14 days, but we are going to have fun with kids and we're going to teach them something along the way. So thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I do want to share, when we think about the summer programming, we really are trying to maintain the least amount of regression or slide, like keep that going, knowing the realities of the time we have. And I couldn't agree more around the communication, because visiting, and we made some shifts to our program as they described with the curriculum, which were amazing. But in hindsight, I don't think the parents understood. And I think we've got some great ideas next year to like kick off, where there's like literally something to hang on the fridge. Parents can see every day what they're doing, like a one pager. And then when your child comes home, you can talk about what they did and understand that. So 100% feedback taken.
Totally. I love that. And speaking of regression, like my kids go to Ridge, so she's got a shortened summer, which I think helps her a lot. I truly do think that has an impact on her learning. During the summer, we have a tutor all year, and we tutored all through the summer. So I think that helped her a lot, you know. But yeah, I appreciate that feedback, and I will be looking for that communication for sure.
So I went to the end of the summer.
Yes, thank you so much.
I forget what it was called.
It was just enrichment.
It
Students were presenting their favorite pieces or
right,
projects that they had
and it
done.
was nice to see the junior high students all willing to work together and talk together and share, because I think there's that social emotional part of it that goes into it as well. It's you know, the interventions and help they need, but also those courses to get them working together and prepare them to be successful the next year. And so I really appreciate it.
Again, thank you for coming. That was wonderful.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. My other kid was in the instrumental music camp, and that was awesome. They had so much fun. They rocked, like the band when they came out and they were like cymbals. It was amazing. Like it was like a rock and roll concert in there. So that was awesome.
How did the staffing work? Were you able to get District 59 teachers to staff it for the most part, or did you have to go outside?
Yeah, I would say, at least for the LEAP program, probably 95% of our teachers were from within district. We hired a couple of, maybe two or three teachers who were out of district who have subbed for us in the
And an
past.
assistant principal who who worked that as
And
well.
an
We can't
assistant
we
principal.
can't not give a
That's
shout
right.
out to Jen Browning. So
That's
thank
right.
you, Jen.
The best. Those kids are very lucky. And then ESY, how about staffing for ESY?
For ESY, all of our teachers were District 59 employees. I got a couple new teachers in, so got a little bit of a head start on the year, which was great. I did have to hire external ESPs, but we were fully staffed with that. And then I needed to contract one physical therapist. So we're mostly District 59. I'd say like 95% as well.
Do we still have was this the time we have like the partnership with Roosevelt, or that was still?
Yeah, that was one of our enrichment courses, the Spanish Dual Language program, Spanish Dual Language Academy. And yes, there were 12 teachers from 12 Roosevelt teachers, so 2 teachers per classroom. And we had 1 class per grade level, K-5.
And I would just like to add on to Nick's comment about ESY staffing. That is certainly a challenge and something that is ongoing for months and months and months to make sure that we have adequate staffing. We do need to use a lot of different resources to figure out how to make sure we adequately staff ESY each year. And that is something that progressively gets more challenging.
I recall a board meeting months ago where I think a board member asked, "What can we do?" To get more teachers. So I just did that pan out, or
Yeah, I mean, we sent out a lot of emails, did some, shoulder tapping, but we didn't have to do any bribes or anything like that. I think they were excited about.
It's never
the change.
easy.
No,
right?
it's
never
not.
easy, right?
It's not. I think they
Okay.
were excited about the change in the curriculum that we were using that would be helping support the kids into the next school year. And so I think that sparked some interest as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out because these are 3 of our rock star assistant principals who really are our up and coming future principals of tomorrow. So appreciate all they do. And Nicole and your whole team. Thank you.
All right, we can get on to the consent agenda. We have items 6.01 through 6.05. Can I get a motion to approve? Oh, does anybody need anything pulled first? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
Oh, I'll do it. I don't know how to.
Just say so moved.
What? So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? If not, can we have a roll call vote?
Zach?
Aye.
Eddie? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
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 Sager?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. 7.01, we're on to action items. This is the adoption of the budget for fiscal year 24-25. It's been talked about on display. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion that we approve the budget.
Any discussion?
I'll second. Sorry, I didn't have it on.
Any discussion? If not, could we get a roll call vote?
All right. Eddie, aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Kinziger?
Aye.
Notini?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Chesney absent, and Zach.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. 7.02, the approval of the policies recommended by the IASB. This is what we went over, right? So we've been over this. Any, can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the policies.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
All right. Johnson?
Aye.
Kinziger?
Aye.
Notini?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Chesney's absent. Zach?
Aye.
And Eddie? Aye.
All right, the motion passes. And then we have 7.03, the approval of District 59 Education Foundation donation. Somebody want to read this?
I'll make the motion. Be it resolved that on the 11th day of September 2024, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approves the donation from the District 59 Education Foundation for $2,000 to sponsor a third of the district-sponsored parent workshops for the next year. Be it further resolved that the superintendent shall communicate to the District 59 Education Foundation in writing expressing the appreciation of the members of the Board of Education, and that this donation shall be listed in the official minutes of this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, no.
Second, whatever I am.
All right. All right, great.
Okay, so who seconded that one?
I did.
Nicole.
Then who?
Sarah did it
Sarah did.
first.
She just
Well,
read
that's
it.
what-
this
Because
I
she
time.
read
had
it.
Somebody's, okay.
All right.
Did we mention we're a new board?
If, thank you. And
Thank
roll
you.
call vote.
All right. Kissinger.
Aye.
Sorry. Notini.
Aye.
Sager.
Aye.
Shelby is absent. Zach.
Aye.
Eddie. Aye. And Johnson.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, now somebody wants to read. We have the Salt Creek PTO donation. I guess I'll read. So be it resolved on the 11th day of September 2024, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approves the $3,460 donation from Salt Creek PTO to Salt Creek Elementary School to purchase HR monitors from Heart Zones for the Salt Creek PE program. Be it further resolved, the superintendent shall communicate to the Salt Creek PTO in writing expressing the appreciation of the members of the Board of Education and that this donation shall be listed in the official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Notini.
Aye.
Sager.
Aye.
Chesney is absent. Zach.
Aye.
Eddie. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Kitzinger. I'm
Aye.
killing
All
your
right,
name. I'm
motion
sorry.
passes. Thank you.
Congratulations, Coach Bo Phillips out there. Shout out.
Okay, on to
Yeah, he would be so happy.
8.01 discussion items. So prepare,
Oh, wait.
we need to prepare and set the tax levy date.
Okay.
So just so we know, we want to authorize the administration to proceed with preparing it with the public hearing on November 13th.
Okay, and so.
I mean, do you want me to, I can go through the whole
No,
thing. I was just trying to do you a favor.
No, thank you.
I'm sorry. Hello?
I just want to.
Hello?
I just want to make sure it's clear because some people have had questions. So the levy, we are limited to increases of 5% or the CPI, whichever is less. Correct.
Correct.
And so this year we're asking for the CPI, which is less. There's
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll talk about it as a recommendation, but I'd like to present all the facts first
Okay,
to the board.
great. Okay, so this is just us saying we're going to talk about it another date. All right, great. Anything else? All right, 8.02, prepare the 2025-26 budget.
That's another one. It's just a board policy as well as a state requirement. If we can just approve next month about the preparing the budget for next year.
Okay. Good. 9.0, reports of the Board of Education.
Sorry, real quick. We just added this as a
Oh, sorry.
discussion item just to accommodate. Thank you to our board who will be convening at a special board meeting on Monday, September 16th at 4:30 p.m. For the approval of the bids for the Brentwood project. My apologies that they did not get included as an action item tonight, but all of the information has been shared with the board. It is here listed as well. So we hope that Monday will be an opportunity if anyone from the public so wishes to come and, comment, but also an opportunity for the board to approve so we can move the project forward and keep it on time.
Thank you. Sorry. All right, reports of the Board of Education. We can start with you, Nicole. You got anything to report?
Yes. We went to the Mount Prospect culture, what was it called? Celebration of Cultures. Thank you so much. And it was such a fun time. I brought my kids. There was so much free stuff for them to do. They gave them a little booklet that was like a passport, and they put stickers in it for every booth they went to. And they even suckered me out of some craft things because they were so cute. I couldn't resist. The craft things, not my kids. So it was a lot of fun, and it was great to meet the mayor of Mount Prospect And I think Lucas was there also, but I hung out with Michelle mostly, and we saw Sarah there too. They had beautiful Hawaiian dancers. They had a mariachi band. They had loteria. They had face painting. So many fun things. So I hope that, you know, more families will join us next year because it was a great time.
Michelle?
Sure. So yeah, I attended that as well. So I just echo what Nicole had said. I also attended the first parent education event, which Terry described earlier at Holmes. That was very formative. And Sarah and I are actually going to be visiting John Jay School next week. That'll be my first official school visit. And then I've had several meetings here in the district, just new board member stuff. So a lot going on. That's it.
Sarah?
Might have been covered.
All right. I did the first parent series and it was great. I hope that more people show up because she's amazing.
So I just wanted to do a shout out to administration and our maintenance crews when we had a big storm in Mount Prospect and Des Plaines that took out power at a couple of our buildings. I took the opportunity the next day to drive around and check out that neighborhood, and there were some massive trees down, especially Devonshire, the field right next to it, not our tree, but we had one tree fall into the playground, but there was a gigantic tree in the Park District field next door that fell over. It was huge. I don't know, like 6 feet around across or something like that. So great job by the maintenance crews cleaning up our trees, which didn't, other than Devonshire, didn't seem to be too bad, and making sure that, you know, we lost the one day of school due to the power outage at 2 places, but everything got resolved the next day.
Good. All right, I have no report. So we can go on to 10.01, the board committees. Okay. So these are board level. So we convene these whenever necessary, sometimes in the format of committee as a whole, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we don't need to talk about those. We have the safety committee, myself and Nikki.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. The insurance and employee wellness actually doesn't operate in a committee of the whole
okay.
type format. So we are looking for volunteers from the board to serve in that capacity.
I love insurance.
I think TR just volunteered.
All right.
Sign him up.
7 times per year?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I can
Yeah.
do that. That's fine. I can do that
Great. Thank you. We appreciate that.
one. For now. And then school, does anybody?
Sure. EdRed is an organization to which we belong. It is a group that we subscribe to that helps really lobby and advocate on behalf of school districts in legislative policies across all aspects of
Yes,
education.
it's specifically the Northwest suburban schools. And, they'll explain what they're lobbying on, and then they'll have.
They
events
usually
with
have like a couple
legislators.
events in the year. They have meetings. Ron attends. I often attend as well. And then there's like, a luncheon that's upcoming in October. That's during the day, but then sometimes they have a dinner, usually in the winter time. But it's a nice advocacy group. But we participate as a district as well.
Are you gonna be able to do the daytime stuff?
Well, I wouldn't be able to.
Can we have more than one?
It's unfortunate.
How much
they
is it?
usually have daytime
Okay.
things. It's usually like a Friday afternoon. It's
Like, well,
yeah.
like lunch.
Usually
It's
lunches.
usually like a lunch, but again, the meetings. So I will say, not always do you have board members that come. Like, so as I think what's most important is that we have district representation, whether that's in the form of administration or board member. So we cover it. The events that are a little bit more where they bring in speakers and things like that are nice opportunities to have board members come and be partners with us. So I think we can be flexible, or we can always put out the broader ones and invite, because everyone's welcome to come for those events, like the luncheon or things
Then maybe
like
we
that.
just do that, and like the
If someone can't
events.
commit to all the the regular meetings, then maybe we'll make sure that we're just invited to functions and see who can come from that perspective.
I can probably
Okay.
do that more often than not, but I feel like I get
Okay.
so much from them. I'm going to miss when it's an actual event.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I feel like I get an email every day from them.
Sure.
Right?
There's a
Yeah.
lot of advocacy work going on. So,
Okay, you can put
yeah.
me in.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah. Correct.
Absolutely.
Committee like that.
Are you updating these? We just can't see on there. Okay, got it.
I will, I'm doing the minutes, but I'll add
Okay.
it on there.
Anything else? Okay. If not, we just need to go into close. I'm just joking. I just need to. It's just disregarded. Can I get a motion to adjourn? And it's what, 10:46?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second. All right. Roll call vote.
Zach?
Aye.
Eddie? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Kissinger?
Aye.
Notini? Aye. Sager?
Aye.
Sajni is absent. And the motion?
Passes.